Chapter 587. Currently, the broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners who were still at the clan looked up into the sky at Yen Zhaoga on the back of the Kunping. Shocked and reverent expressions appeared on their faces. Before this, Yen Zhaoga's position in the clan had already long since been incomparable to that of the younger generation disciples. In the hearts of many, his position had been even higher than that of many seniors of the clan. However, at that time, they had only regarded him with respect. It had never been like now, as though they were looking at a divinity, wishing that they could prostrate themselves in worship. An expert of the 4th level of the Martial Saint Realm, 2 experts of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint Realm, and 2 experts of the 2nd level of the Martial Saint Realm, more than half of them bearing sacred artifacts. Such a powerful lineup had never appeared in any era of the entire history of the 8 Extremities world. Normally speaking, this was truly a force that could sweep through the entire 8 Extremities world without question. Now, however, it had been defeated by Yen Zhaoga alone. Such a miraculous feat was unparalleled throughout the history of the 8 Extremities world. How could this not leave the eyes of every broad Creed Mountain disciple dazzled, filled with endless reverence? Fu Enshu and the others were astonished that he had returned so quickly. This had truly surpassed all their predictions. They had indeed spent quite a bit of time on their return after exterminating the Sacred Sun Clan martial practitioners. However, Yen Zhaoga had instead left the Heaven Domain, heading to the distant world-illuminating peak of the Fire Domain. Even Fu Enshu, who knew about the Northern Ocean clone's divine speed, felt surprised. Still, seeing Yen Zhaoga return, Fu Enshu felt reassured. This was a rather inconceivable thing for her, who had always been headstrong. Before this, there had only been Yuan Zhengfeng, Yen Di, and a few others who had given her such a feeling. Fu Enshu had never had such a feeling even from seniors like Zhang Kuan and He Ning, transcending mortality martial grandmasters. Now, however, there was a young man who was not even 30 who also gave her such a feeling. If it was the past Fu Enshu, she would never have believed that she would have such a change in mentality at this moment. Now, however, she only felt that it was only natural, not feeling that it was abnormal in the slightest. While Fu Enshu's heart had calmed, Changzheng instead felt vaguely uneasy. Stabilizing his mind, he looked at Yen Zhaoga and said, "Zhaoga, congratulations on your great improvement in strength, having established an unparalleled feat." While He Ning was injured, looking at Yen Zhaoga now, she also nodded repeatedly. Yen Zhaoga nodded towards He Ning in return before directly descending towards where Fu Enshu, Changzheng, and the others were. He glanced at Changzheng, asking, "What is going on now?" Fu Enshu stared at Changzheng, while Elder Qin told Yen Zhaoga about how the disciplinary hall had investigated Feng Yunsheng and Yin Luhua earlier. After hearing this, Yen Zhaoga was expressionless as he lowered his head and looked in the direction of Feng Yunsheng and Yin Luhua's residence. Barriers were erected around the 2 people's houses. Those barriers were set up by the people of the disciplinary hall. Their purpose was to keep them under house arrest and to keep them in custody rather than to protect them. When the Radiant Light Sect and the Sacred Sun Clan had attacked earlier, the entire broad Creed Mountain had been shaken. Feng Yunsheng and Yin Luhua had long since been alerted. When Deng Sun, Yang Zhanhua, and the others were executed and the mountain gate was finally safe, Feng Yunsheng and Li Wuyo came out of the house and stood inside the barrier, carefully looking outside. Changzheng and Fu Enshu arrived one after another. Seeing Fu Enshu, joy instantly appeared on Feng Yunsheng's face, while Yin Luohua's face was pale as she unconsciously wanted to hide within her house. When she saw Yen Zhaoga's figure appear, the joy on Feng Yunsheng's face grew even denser. She revealed a bright, radiant smile, extending her hand and giving Yen Zhaoga a big thumbs up. Yan Zhaoga said, nothing as he directly strode towards Feng Yunxing's house. As his figure descended, the light of the barrier soundlessly shattered into nothingness, transforming into a gentle breeze as it instantly vanished. Seeing Yan Zhaoga's actions, Chang Zheng's eyelids twitched. Elder Qin said quietly from the side, Enshu has already told this old man about her experiences. Yin Luhua and Hong Jieqi's accusations against Feng Yunxing are purely false accusations. Chang Zheng was silent. According to the rules, even if it was false accusations after the truth had been made clear, it should still be the people of the disciplinary hall who should remove the barrier. However, looking at Yan Zhaoga now, how could he do so? This action of Yan Zhaoga's caused him to feel increasingly uneasy. Looking at Yan Zhaoga, Feng Yunxing smiled. I was still guessing earlier that you would definitely be fine. Perhaps you were just waiting there, appearing at the most critical moment and giving everyone a fright. Looking at Feng Yunxiang, Yan Zhaoga's familiar features did not contain any air of despondency. She had once been just a short distance away from the peak, finally about to ascend it. In the end, she had fallen to the bottom of the valley due to someone else's scheme, never to see the light of day again. However, Feng Yunxing's eyes were still bright, just like when the two had first met in the Eastern Tang that year. She had not blamed the heavens or others, had not been despondent or despondent. Her first words upon meeting him had not been pleading for help, nor had they been filled with worry. It had always been that bright smile, that high-spirited, valiant stance. Yan Zhaoga smiled, as well. The movements this time were indeed a little big. He reached out, very naturally grasping Feng Yunxing's palm. In that instant when they met Yan Zhaoga's gaze, Feng Yunxing seemed to understand something. A rare hint of shyness appeared on her face despite her usual valiant demeanor. Still, it was gone in a flash, as her smile grew even more radiant, bright as it had never been before. Seeing Yan Zhaoga's actions, everyone was slightly shocked. While Fu Enshu had been mentally prepared for this, she was also rather taken aback. It was just that she had been taken aback by Yan Zhaoga's straightforward expression. Looking at Feng Yunxiang, Yan Zhaoga smiled. I am a person who likes to take risks, often making big movements. Who knows when I might get myself into it? I'm preparing to find a housekeeper to manage me. Feng Yunxiang smiled as well. Who knows? She might go crazy along with you. You want someone like that too? Yan Zhaoga brought Feng Yunxing's palm closer to him before he lightly touched her forehead with his lips. I'll suffer a little. Just make do with it. Feng Yunxing lowered her head, laughing nonstop. Right, it's really been hard on you. Leading Feng Yunxing away, Yan Zhaoga gazed at Fu Enshu, smiling. Forgive me, senior apprentice Aunt Fu. Your disciple has been abducted. Gazing at the two for a long time, Fu Enshu smiled. That will depend on your own abilities. Yan Zhaoga nodded. Right. Still, before abducting her, there are some things that have to be dealt with first. Hearing his words, Chang Zheng's expression did not change, but his heart jolted. He looked first at Feng Yunxiang and then at Yan Zhaoga. Logically speaking, if Yan Zhaoga wanted to clear Feng Yunxing's name, he would first have to avoid arousing suspicion. If he spoke for his lover, it would undoubtedly affect the perception of bystanders, weakening his own persuasiveness. Yet, Yan Zhaoga had not done so. On the contrary, he had acted openly and openly without any reservations at all. Such a move did not put Chang Zheng at ease. Instead, he vaguely felt fear, as if the domain of ghosts and shadows had been exposed to the bright sunlight. What he felt from Yan Zhaoga's actions was both the confidence of being able to sufficiently prove Feng Yunxing's innocence and also the domineeringness of, I will protect my people, who dares to touch them. At this moment, Yan Zhaoga's gaze swept across Chang Zheng and Yin Luhua, the coldness within causing one's heart to palpitate. To be continued. Chapter 588. Yen Zhaoge's gaze fell on Yin Luhua. Yin Luhua was still standing within the barrier that sealed her residence, her body trembling nonstop like a leaf. She wanted to turn and flee, but her feet seemed like they had been cast onto the great earth as she was hard-pressed to move. Yen Zhaoge shook his head slightly. I had originally thought that it was just her mentality being wrong, being lazy and easygoing. Who knew that? Still, there is something else apart from that. Yen Zhaoge no longer looked at Yin Luhua, instead glancing at Changzheng. I feel that with all of you appearing here together, some problems should already be explained. Fu Enshu said coldly, That's right. I am very curious as to why the usually capable senior apprentice brother Chang would create such an unresolved case. Looking at Yen Zhaoge, Changzheng slowly answered, Junior apprentice sister Fu, with you all safe and sound, the truth of what happened that day will naturally come to light. However, before that, it will naturally be hard to say for sure. Fu Enshu said bluntly, If Lu Hua lies, while there is the blood-soul recollection ceremony, the ceremony can also be faked. I understand my disciple. She has a weak mind. With your cultivation base, senior apprentice brother Chang, you would be able to suppress her to the point of panic, revealing her true self. How could she have been able to deceive us till this day? Fu Enshu gazed at Changzheng. I do not believe that you, senior apprentice brother Chang, are unable to see through this. Still, why has it become like this? Changzheng answered calmly, Junior apprentice sister Fu, your words are a little too heavy. Junior apprentice Nisine is like this because you personally came here. Seeing that the matter was exposed, she was scared out of her wits. When I interrogated her, she did not show any abnormalities, her mental state being very stable. He looked expressionlessly at Fu Enshu. Junior apprentice sister Fu, perhaps you do not understand your disciple as well as you think you do. Otherwise, how would you not have been able to tell that this girl harbored ill intentions previously, actually committing the great crime of colluding with outsiders and harming fellow disciples? Fu Enshu was greatly enraged, her brows arching upwards. Changzheng, who are you trying to fool? Elder Qin frowned. Which master would normally interrogate their disciples? How could this be the same as the interrogation of your disciplinary hall? Fu Enshu stared coldly at Changzheng. If you are not guilty, what have you come here for? Although Yunsheng has been wronged in this matter, I'm afraid you're not here for her, but for Lu Hua. Yin Liuhua's entire body stiffened, as she vaguely comprehended something as she looked at Changzheng with a gaze filled with lingering fear. While Changzheng continued to investigate Feng Yunsheng, he was still acting according to the rules on the surface, unable to find any major mistakes. However, with Yin Luhua here, if Fei Zhen had continued to protect her in secret, she should have long since been exposed. With Fu Enshu's return to the mountain, the truth was revealed. Changzheng's treatment of Feng Yunsheng, to put it mildly, was merely overly harsh, possibly affecting the overall situation and affecting the extreme Yin bout. He was conservative in his thinking. To put it more seriously, it was at most that he had handled matters incorrectly, neglecting his duties. However, when Fu Enshu had interrogated Yin Luhua afterwards and understood the details of Changzheng's interrogation of her, she had immediately discovered that Changzheng had other intentions. Changzheng had appeared here today precisely to silence them, using the Radiant Light Sect expert's accidental injuries as a cover. However, the ones who were to be silenced were Yin Luhua, as well as that solitary practitioner Hong Jiechi, who had come to make a false accusation. Understanding this, Yin Luhua knelt onto the ground towards Fu Enshu, sobbing unceasingly, Master! Master, please forgive this disciple for being muddle-headed for a moment, being bewitched by the traitors of the Sacred Sun clan. In the process of the investigation, Senior Apprentice Uncle Chang indeed protected this disciple greatly. He should be someone of the Sacred Sun clan. Chang Zheng glanced expressionlessly at Yin Lu Hua as he thought to himself, unable to accomplish anything at all, only capable of ruining things. Having been pointed out by Yin Lu Hua, his expression did not change as he instead said candidly, "I have handled matters incorrectly, having let down the position of first seat of the disciplinary hall. I am willing to relinquish my position and reflect on it in seclusion. However, junior apprentice niece Yin's slandering of me is something that I cannot ignore." Chang Zheng said in a clear voice, "The heavens and earth can be my witness." This Chang was born as a descendant of Broad Creed Mountain, having never been associated with the Sacred Sun clan in the slightest. An upright person does not fear a crooked shadow. This is what I say no matter where I go. He looked at Yin Lu Hua. "Slandering me cannot lessen your guilt. Colluding with external enemies and framing a fellow disciple, even affecting the clan's grand plan to win the extreme Yin crown, such a crime is already punishable by death. Junior apprentice niece Feng has proven her innocence, and it was precisely because of you that you were attacked back then that your whereabouts were leaked. I have reason to suspect that it was you who intentionally leaked the news to the Sacred Sun clan in order to harm junior apprentice niece Feng. Now, you even falsely accuse a senior. According to the clan's laws, you deserve to die." Yin Lu Hua was rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied as she hissed, "No, it was you, it was you." Chang Zheng no longer looked at her, seemingly completely disdainful of debating with her. Looking at Yan Zhaoga, Feng Yunsheng, Fu Enshu, and Elder Qin, he said solemnly, having been hoodwinked by others, "I was overly cautious and thus wronged junior apprentice niece Feng, affecting the clan's plan to win the extreme Yin crown. This is my fault. However, saying that I am involved with the Sacred Sun clan is slandering me. Junior apprentice sister Fu, I already said just now that I was only passing by while patrolling. You have misunderstood me." Fu Enshu smiled coldly, pushing the blame cleanly. "Do you mean that you were only derelict in your duties?" Chang Zheng said calmly, "The innocent will naturally be innocent." "Feng," Yinsheng suddenly asked, "since that is so, why did senior apprentice Uncle Chang want to frame me?" Chang Zheng frowned. "What did you say?" Feng Yinsheng looked straight at him. "During the initial investigation, a shadow spirit talisman was found in my shadow shrinking pouch. That was not mine. Senior apprentice Uncle Chang, you asked me if Yin Lu Hua could come into contact with my shadow shrinking pouch. The disciplinary hall went to ask Yin Lu Hua whether it was true or not. She would definitely deny it." Hearing her words, Chang Zheng's gaze hardened slightly. "Feng," Yunsheng said, "I answered then that she could, but in truth, she did not have this chance. The only ones who could touch my shadow shrinking pouch, other than myself, are senior apprentice Uncle Wang, who took it away from me, and you, senior apprentice Uncle Chang, who finally managed to preserve my shadow shrinking pouch. The shadow spirit talisman is not mine or Yin Liu Hua's. Then it can only be you or senior apprentice Uncle Wang. How about we invite senior apprentice Uncle Wang over to verify it now?" Chang Zheng's expression did not change, but he looked deeply at Feng Yunsheng. Feng Yunsheng's gaze was bright, her expression fearless. "I had originally thought that it was Yin Lu Hua who had colluded with outsiders to harm me. However, after hearing of the existence of that shadow spirit talisman, I suddenly realized that it was not just Yin Lu Hua who had a problem. Marshal Uncle Chang, the person who is in charge of the law and is someone with a high position in the sect. I'm not sure if you're the only one, and I'm not sure who I should report to, so I can only patiently deal with it. Fortunately, Master and Zhaoga are blessed by the heavens." Chang Zheng sucked in a deep breath, saying mildly, "Junior apprentice nephew Feng, I know that you feel aggrieved, but there is no need to take revenge on me in such a manner. back then, I was also carrying out my duties. After today, I would have accepted the blame and abdicated my position as the first seat of the disciplinary hall, accepting the punishment for my dereliction of duty myself. You, on the other hand, need to know that slandering your elders is a serious crime. Do not make a mistake because of a moment of anger. The sect does not prohibit disciples from keeping shadow spirit talismans. Feng Yunqing's expression did not change. Senior Uncle Chang must be joking. I just don't understand. With your experience, why would you do something that would leave behind such an obvious weakness? There must have been something that made you extremely anxious to convict me of my crimes, or perhaps it was something that would make me unable to escape for a long period of time. If you are not of the Sacred Sun clan, what benefits would you get from doing this? Chang Zhang had still wanted to say something when Yan Zhaoge said mildly, I think that I know why. Chapter 589. Looking at Chang Zhang, Yan Zhaoge's gaze was calm, yet icy cold, causing Chang Zhang's heart to involuntarily jolt. You are looking for something, right? You think that it is with Yunsheng? Yan Zhaoge asked Feng Yunsheng, did you obtain anything at the East Sea? Right, it should have been destroyed afterwards. Hearing his words, Feng Yunsheng's eyes suddenly lit up. An orb. I did not understand its use, so I brought it back to the mountain. After returning, I did not bother with it. The night before Hong Jiechi ascended the mountain, the orb suddenly shattered on its own. Hearing Feng Yunsheng's words, Chang Zheng's pupils abruptly dilated, his body seemingly wanting to move, yet he forcibly stopped himself. Yan Zhaoge said slowly, that is a unique treasure, the heaven spying orb. It can be used for long-distance surveillance, also having the effect of recording the scenes of the time. The orb is the mother of the orb, and the child orb can only monitor. However, everything that the child orb can see can be seen elsewhere through the heaven spying orb. Also, the heaven spying orb itself can record it. Yan Zhaoge glanced deeply at Chang Zhang. The scenes recorded by the heaven spying orb can be destroyed, but they are hard to tamper with. It is truly irrefutable evidence. As he said this, an orb appeared within Yan Zhaoge's palm. Seeing that orb, Chang Zhang slowly lowered his gaze. Feng Yunsheng stared at that orb. It's like mine, just a little bigger. Yan Zhaoge tapped lightly on the heaven spying orb, a scene instantly being projected from it. It was shockingly the scene of Chang Zhang plotting against infinite, boundless mountains' grand elder Li Jingtu on the East Sea back, then attempting to wrest the heaven-cleaving axe. Feng, Yunsheng, Fu Enshu, and Elder Qin were all greatly shocked. Yan Zhaoge said mildly, this is what Chang Zhang wanted to conceal. It was precisely because I saw this scene that I slew the Sacred Sun clan's Huang Jie and obtained this treasure. Therefore, I immediately rushed back to the mountain. At the time, I still did not know the specific situation over at Yunqing's side. Therefore, I was more worried that Chang Zhang might have been threatened by the Sacred Sun clan earlier and had done something to the mountain. After returning and understanding the situation, I realized that Chang Zhang probably still did not know who exactly possessed this heaven spying orb. Under his control, 3 grooves appeared on the surface of the heaven spying orb. One of them flickered with light, while the other 2 were dim. Logically speaking, the heaven spying orb only has one son and one mother, but Huang Jie's orb is special, being the only one with 3 sons and 1 mother. One of the sons recorded the scene back then, which was destroyed after being discovered by Chang Zhang. The second orb is still in Huang Jie's possession. A slightly smaller pearl appeared within Yan Zhaoge's hand. Chang Zhang abruptly raised his head. He was not a fool. Seeing the 2 orbs on Yan Zhaoge's head, and hearing Yan Zhaoge mention that this heaven-spying orb had 3 orbs and 1 orb, he gradually understood. Yan Zhaoge continued. The 3rd orb fell into Yunqing's hands. Changzheng was misled by Huang Jie into thinking that the orb in Yunxing's hands was the heaven-spying orb itself. The reason why he framed Yunxing along with Yin Luhua and Hong Jiechi was in order to obtain this heaven-spying orb from Yunxing, lest his secret be revealed. Sadly, from the very beginning, Huang Jie destroyed that sun orb remotely through the heaven-spying orb itself. It is destined that Changzheng will never be able to find it. Yan Zhaoge looked calmly at Changzheng. Changzheng, there is no need for you to pat your chest so loudly. You are indeed not in cahoots with the Sacred Sun clan. You are merely Huang Jie's marionette, a puppet. If he wants you to dance, you will dance. If he wants you to sing, you will sing. Changzheng could only feel the heavens and earth spinning at this moment, a chill spreading throughout his entire body. He was actually also a proud person. The truth of the matter was just too great a blow to him. Infinite scenes seemed to appear before Changzheng's eyes. What awaited him was not just the utter destruction of his reputation, but also the pointing and mocking mockery of countless people. Dazed and dazed, his entire body shuddered. Regaining his wits, Changzheng inhaled deeply as he said stubbornly, "That's right, infinite boundless mountains, Li Jingtu was killed by me. However, I was not aware of the matter of the heaven-spying orb that you speak of. I killed Li Jingtu, harmed an ally, and obtained the heaven-cleaving axe. Still, I did so in order to raise the strength of my clan. I was unclear in the matter of Feng Yunsheng and Yin Luhua, but I definitely had no selfish motives. I did not know of the existence of the heaven-spying orb at all, much less frame Feng Yunsheng for the sake of finding this so-called heaven-spying orb." Changzheng pointed at Yan Zhaoge. "Everything that you have said is only your guesses. You have no actual proof. You are truly different from how you were in the past. However, you are just venting your anger for Feng Yunsheng. I cannot accept this." Before he had finished speaking, the world before his eyes suddenly blurred. Yan Zhaoge looked coldly at Changzheng, who had lost control of his emotions, and pointed at him. He grabbed Changzheng's hand, directly shattering his fingers, the bones of his hand, and his wrist all at once. Changzheng regained consciousness amidst the intense pain. Just as he was about to speak, Yan Zhaoge chuckled. "It is already enough for me to understand the ins and outs of the matter. There is no need for you to accept this." Yan Zhaoge exerted force with his palm. Changzheng's body breaking apart, unceasingly starting from his fingers, passing through his arm and extending towards his shoulder. The skin and flesh of his arm were lacerated, fresh blood dripping as his dense white bones were completely shattered, twisting as they pierced out of his flesh and blood. Changzheng felt a massive force that could not be resisted, starting from his fingers as it slowly crushed down on his entire body. It shattered together as though it was being crushed by a millstone. Yan Zhaoge said mildly, "I want to kill you. So what if you are unconvinced?" The shattering of his flesh and blood stopped at Changzheng's shoulder as Yan Zhaoge released his hand. However, before Changzheng could heave a sigh of relief, his legs and other palm that had not been caught by Yan Zhaoge also began shattering from the end, his flesh and blood becoming indistinct as it extended upwards. Changzheng roared furiously as he struggled. "You do not have the authority to kill me. Even if I relinquish my position as the first seat elder of the disciplinary hall, only the chief or the trusted first seat elder of the disciplinary hall can convict me and punish me. With the chief not present, all the higher echelon longtime elders of the clan must decide on how to deal with me. Before this, you can only imprison me at most. You cannot kill me. You cannot." He wanted to struggle, yet discovered that Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone was standing behind him, his palm pressed against his back, as he was unable to move at all. Yan Zhaoge looked indifferently at Changzheng. "You are right about one thing. I am really very angry now. even angrier than when I killed those of the Radiant Light sect and the Sacred Sun clan. Even as I was tirelessly taking care of external enemies one after another, there was someone on my side stabbing me in the back. If I don't kill you, who should I kill? Lowering his head and looking down at Changzheng, Yan Zhaoge said slowly, "You don't have to speak so loudly. Even if you roar all the way to the flame devil world today, they will still be able to hear you. No one will be able to protect you." Changzheng howled madly, unable to form a sound. The Northern Ocean clone did not cease exerting force as Changzheng's limbs were completely shattered before converging towards his torso, his entire person finally being crushed into a pile of flesh and blood. To be continued. Chapter 590. Starting from his 4 limbs to his entire body, Changzheng was like a rag that had been wrung into a pulp. His flesh was badly mangled, and his bones were exposed. Seeing this, Yin Luhua nearly fainted within the barrier. While she had bitten back at Changzheng earlier, hearing Yan Zhaoge's words now, she could not help but tremble in fear. Yan Zhaoge now swiveled his head to look at Yin Luhua. Yin Luhua shook her head in panic. Senior apprentice brother, Yan, I know I was wrong. I was just confused for a moment. I didn't do it on purpose. Master, disciple knows his mistake. Please save me. Disciple won't dare to do it again. Fu Enshu looked at Yin Luhua with a complex expression on her face. Changzheng was wrong, but what he said about you earlier was not wrong. The crimes you have committed this time are more than enough for you to die. Yin Luhua's heart chilled as she cried unresignedly. Master, I really didn't intend to harm you back then. I really didn't intentionally reveal my whereabouts to that person. I didn't know that he was someone of the Sacred Sun clan. Fu Enshu stared at her. I believe what you said, but what about everything after that? Yin Luhua stammered. I was threatened by them. Your fate was unknown, and you had disappeared. I was scared silly at that time. Looking at Yin Luhua, Fu Enshu's gaze was disappointed to the extreme. You were scared silly back then. Have you been muddle-headed for such a long time after returning to our clan from the East Sea? Elder Brother Chong said that I don't understand you. That's right, but it's also wrong. I understand many things about you, but there are some things that I really don't understand. Even now, I still don't understand how you got to this step. Fu Enshu shook her head slowly as she spoke. Yin Luhua's expression turned dazed before her gaze gradually turned somewhat neurotic, chaotic, and unfocused. She laughed, pointed at Fu Enshu, and said loudly, Why did I come to this step? You ask me why I came to this point. Ha 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 ha, do you really not understand? From day to night, it's always the extreme Yin crown and the extreme Yin bout. Ever since I entered the clan, all of you have been looking down on me, always liking to compare me with this woman. Pointing at Feng Yunsheng, Yin Luhua said furiously, Why must I be like her? Fu Enshu gazed at Yin Luhua. If you are really unwilling, really wanting to give up, while I would feel pity, I would not force you to continue. Yin Luhua snorted. You are already so dissatisfied with me. If I were to say that I give up, wouldn't you all be looking down on me even more? How would I be able to maintain my footing in the clan in the future then? Looking at Yin Luhua, Yan Zhaoge raised his brows lightly. Oh, I understand a little now. As he spoke, Yin Luhua's body immediately trembled. Yan Zhaoge said slowly, So it's not just that she enjoys leisure and abhors work, her willpower not being firm. Even as she doesn't want to put in the effort, she is also unwilling to part with the treatment and position of a maiden of extreme Yin in the clan, wanting to drink water, yet not wanting to bear the burden. Yan Zhaoge swiveled his head to look at Feng Yunsheng. It's not purely jealousy and disparity arising from the comparison of superiority and inferiority. It's not competition, but wanting to monopolize everything. It couldn't be that the heavenly thunder halls Nian Lei and infinite boundless mountains Ling, we gave you inspiration? Without Yunsheng, the clan would only be left with you, a maiden of extreme een. However much of a trash you are, however lazy you are, as long as you have not completely lost all hope of competing for the extreme een crown, the clan would have to tolerate you. You would then be able to have a clear conscience, leisurely eating, and not working. Yin Luhua looked at Yan Zhaoga both fearfully and hatefully. She seemed to have thrown caution to the wind as her gaze shifted between Yan Zhaoga and Feng Yunsheng. The two of you have long been together. Therefore, you take special care of her. Whatever good things you have, you give them to her first. I am inferior to her in the first place, yet you are always biased towards her, causing the gap between us to grow larger and larger. You are basically intentionally using me to set her off. The worse I am, the better I set her off. Feng Yunsheng frowned. Biased towards me in what way? Other than the fact that the clan really doesn't have any Qilin stones, you having the heavenly spring baptism, and I having the Qilin spring baptism. Whatever I have, you have it all. You are so unjust just for a single Qilin stone. Yin Luhua yelled, "Nonsense! That cold marrow needle technique is not something that humans can bear at all. That is one of the 7 great punishments of ancient times. If not for him taking special care of you, how would you have been able to bear it?" Hearing her words, Feng Yunsheng was angered to the point of laughing. Yin Luhua was even more hateful. You still have the face to laugh. If there's one, there'll be 2. Besides, who knows how many benefits he's given you in secret. Don't act like you're innocent after taking advantage of him. At this moment, she no longer concealed her emotions and glared at Feng Yunsheng with hatred. *TCH. Do you know that every time you pretend to care about me, it only makes me feel so disgusted that I want to vomit? Feng Yunsheng was speechless. Feng Yunsheng glanced fixedly at Yin Luhua, as though meeting her for the first time. After staring at Yin Luhua for a while, Feng Yunsheng slowly shook her head, her gaze gradually turning sharp and intimidating. Being stared at by her gaze, Yin Luhua felt a chill in her heart. Feng Yunsheng had never looked at her with such a gaze before. It should be said that Feng Yunsheng had virtually never displayed such a domineering aura in front of her fellow disciples. Feng Yunsheng, who especially cherished her current life, had always been gentle in Broad Creed Mountain, to the extent that Yin Luhua had always forgotten that the girl before her was actually an extremely tough and proud person. She recalled that she had also seen such a Feng Yunsheng before. That Feng Yunsheng, who had been domineering, sharp, arrogant, and domineering when she had participated in the extreme Yin bout, and whose might surpassed even that of a man. Feng Yunsheng said resolutely and decisively, "I have always thought that without Zhaoga, without Master, without Broad Creed Mountain, there would be no me today. But everything that I've obtained has been fair and above board. There are no clandestine tricks at all." Feng Yunsheng looked at Yin Luhua. "In your eyes, I have done something that you are unable to do. Is that me cheating? Then, let me tell you now, in this world, there are some things that I can do while you cannot. Therefore, I am me and you are you. You don't like others comparing me to you. I also want to say not to compare you to me. There are indeed some things that you cannot compare to." Feng Yunsheng's tone was calm, but the calmer she was, the more stifled Yin Luhua felt within her heart. This was the first time she had faced such a sharp, domineering Feng Yunsheng. Looking at her, she felt like she had become increasingly small. This feeling caused her to feel humiliated and furious. Yin Luhua even ignored the barrier before her as she howled, wanting to rush towards Feng Yunsheng. Yan Zhaoga looked at Fu Enshu. Fu Enshu appeared to be in low spirits as she opened her mouth, wanting to say something, yet was unable to utter a sound, as she could only sigh in the end. Nodding slowly, Yen Zhaoge glanced mildly at Yin Luhua, who was lunging over madly. He did not do anything else, just glancing at her. Yin Luhua's movements gradually grew sluggish before coming to a halt. Her skin was blood red, her entire person resembling a cooked prawn. This was because all the blood vessels of her entire body, big and small, had already been shattered. Yin Luhua wanted to speak, yet discovered that she was unable to. There had originally not been a single wound on the surface of her body at all. However, accompanied by this action of opening her mouth to speak, blood began spurting out from every single pore of her entire body. Her entire person, from the inside out, was completely covered in blood. As Yen Zhaoge glanced at her, she was a dead person. To be continued. Chapter 5, 91. As Yen Zhaoge's gaze swept past her, Yin Luhua was directly turned into a person of blood. Accompanied by the shattering of her internal organs and blood vessels, her life left her. Looking at Yin Luhua, Fu Enchu's expression was complex and hard to understand. Having an irritable and unyielding personality, she was exceptionally disappointed in Yin Luhua, as she virtually could not help but personally take care of her. However, they had been master and disciple at the end of the day. While Yin Luhua had committed a capital crime, the softness in her heart had still been touched at the end of the day, causing her to feel sad. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoge was happy to do it for her. To him, people like Changzheng and Yin Luhua, who stabbed him in the back, were much more detestable than external enemies. Their deaths were not to be regretted. In the distant horizon outside the mountain, figures flickered as broad creed mountain martial practitioners returned. As he neared, it was the Grand Elder Zhang Kuan. He was precisely Changzheng's master. At the same time, the other Grand Elder, He Ning, who had originally been recuperating, was alerted, as well as she hurried over. As the two arrived, they saw two pools of blood on the ground, the scene reeking to the extreme. Zhang Kuan and He Ning both watched all of this rather bewildered and uncertain. Elder Qin was silent for a moment before he walked forward and explained everything that had happened. After hearing it, the two Grand Elders both felt shocked and incredulous. Being experienced people, they were still not that surprised at Yin Luhua's false accusation of Feng Yunsheng after knowing the truth. The two gradually realized that Yin Luhua and Hong Jiechi had been able to stir up so much trouble. Changzheng, who had been in charge of investigating this matter, would not be able to escape blame. However, never would they have thought that Infinite Boundless Mountain's Grand Elder Li Jingtu had actually been killed by Changzheng. It was also precisely because of this that Changzheng had fallen into Huang Jie's hands, his every move having been predicted and manipulated by Huang Jie as he had unknowingly become his puppet accomplice. Zhang Kuan stared dazedly at the pool of blood and flesh left behind by Changzheng, his face pale. He Ning's expression was similarly complex as she looked at Yen Zhaoge. Zhaoge, could there be some misunderstanding here? The evidence that proved that Changzheng had sought the heaven-spying orb out of his own selfishness, intentionally framing Feng Yunsheng, was not strong enough. While the various pieces of evidence had reconstructed the entire matter, He Ning and Zhang Kuan still held on to that tiny bit of hope within their hearts. Yen Zhaoge glanced calmly at the two old men. How would he not be able to tell that He Ning's words held some hidden meaning? Even if Changzheng had really framed a disciple of his clan out of his own selfishness, even killing people of Infinite Boundless Mountain with the intention of snatching the heaven-cleaving axe, as long as he had not intentionally colluded with the Sacred Sun clan, having committed a private offense of his own accord, he would not necessarily be punished with death. Even if he was sentenced to death, he should still be dealt with after the clan had carried out the punishment. Now that he had been directly killed by Yen Zhaoge here, even if he deserved to die, A conservative old man like He Ning would also be dissatisfied. It was just that the one who had done this was Yen Zhaoga, the Yen Zhaoga, who had just raised the heavens with a single hand, reversing the raging tides and completing an impossible miracle. This caused He Ning to feel suffocated for a moment. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't. For old people like her, the most important thing in the sect was order and rules. In the eyes of He Ning, Zhang Kuan, and the others, order and rules were the foundation for a sect to be passed down for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Because of the existence of order and rules, even if a sect fell into a trough, it would not fall apart, and there would always be a day when it rose again. Perhaps it could not be seen when one was flushed with success, but it was of utmost importance. He Ning was not prejudiced against Yen Zhaoga. This youth was too outstanding, far surpassing them old people. Yen Zhaoga's current accomplishments were already heights that they might never be able to reach in their lifetimes. However, the more this was so, the more she feared that Yen Zhaoga would make a mistake. This youth liked taking risks too much. If he made a single mistake, he might never have any hope of making a comeback again. Meeting He Ning's gaze, Yen Zhaoga immediately felt her thoughts. Without saying anything more, Yen Zhaoga swiveled his head to look at his Northern Ocean clone. The Northern Ocean clone opened his palm, light flickering as a person landed on the ground. Zhang Kuan, He Ning, Fu Enshu, Elder Qin, and the others all looked over, basically recognizing this person. It was a long-time elder of the Sacred Sun clan. It was just that this elder was currently extremely haggard, already completely lacking his former sharpness and arrogance. Yen Zhaoga asked mildly, "Tell me what I asked you earlier. The Sacred Sun clan's Meng Wan, what is the situation now?" That longtime elder raised his head and scanned Zhang Kuan, He Ning, Fu Enshu, Elder Qin, and the others, pulling back the corners of his lips. There is already no meaning in saying all this now. Someone from the higher worlds directly brought Meng Wan and the extreme Yin crown away. The seventh extreme Yin bout no longer exists. However, if there is a seventh extreme Yin bout, Meng Wan has already made preparations for it. Her injuries from the East Sea have already recovered, and she is confident of suppressing the other maidens of extreme Yin once more. The only exception is this longtime elder of the Sacred Sun clan glanced at Feng Yunsheng, his gaze also rather complex. The only one who she might not be able to defeat is Feng Muge. Zhang Kuan and He Ning's gazes froze as they stared at each other. Elder Qin knit his brows slightly. So fast. The injuries she suffered at the East Sea this time were even more severe than before the second extreme Yin bout. The people of Broad Creed Mountain exchanged looks, their faces all sunken. Actually, just thinking about it slightly, one would know that before deciding to guide those of the Radiant Light sect into the Eight Extremities world, since the Sacred Sun clan had schemed against Feng Yunsheng and secured the Extreme Yin crown, there had been a precondition that aside from Feng Yunsheng, they were confident that Meng Wan would be able to defeat the others. This included Turbid Wave Pavilion's Fan Xiu, Jade Sea City's Chun Sutting, and the others. Yen Zhaoga said nothing, but Zhang Kuan felt a fiery pain on his face. He suddenly realized that it was not just Chang Zheng's reactions and actions that had fallen within the calculations of the Sacred Sun clan and Huang Jie. The thoughts and responses of him and He Ning of the moderate faction had similarly fallen within the other party's plans. In order to seek stability, under the circumstances where they could not be certain whether Feng Yunsheng was a spy of the Sacred Sun clan, they had simply given up on this extreme Yin bout, giving the chance to Turbid Wave Pavilion's Fan Xiu. From a certain perspective, while there had been no communication whatsoever, no hints or guidance whatsoever, Zhang Kuan and the others had also followed Huang Jie's lead like Chang Zheng, helping him achieve his goal. If the Sacred Sun clan had been able to resolve the problem of the seal of the East Sea during this period of research, they would not have guided the radiant light sect experts of the world beyond worlds over. Meanwhile, in the seventh extreme Yin bout, Feng Yinsheng had been unable to participate due to her clan, while Meng Wan had fully recovered from her injuries, suppressing all others without any suspense once more. The extreme Yin crown had still remained stably in the hands of the Sacred Sun clan. Everything had gone according to the plans of the Sacred Sun clan and Huang Jia. Yan Zhaoga's expression was calm and gentle, as he did not have any domineering intent of denouncing them. However, Zhang Kuan and He Ning both fell silent, finding it hard to interrupt Yan Zhaoga's direct killing of Changzheng. It was as though there was a silent question surrounding and drowning them out, stably, all the way to the end. Is this the result you stably managed to achieve? To be continued. Chapter 592. Looking at that long-time elder of the Sacred Sun clan before her, He Ning finally let out a long sigh, her expression bleak, as she shook her head, not speaking. Zhang Kuan remained silent, his expression complicated. In the end, all that was left was disappointment. Elder Qin walked over, saying, "The radiant light sect of the world beyond worlds sent 5 martial saint experts this time, while they all perished in the 8 extremities world. I wonder if there are any more reinforcements." Yan Zhaoga did not continue the earlier topic, as he said, "Just now, I chased her to the world illuminating peak. On one hand, it was to have fun, and on the other hand, it was also for this reason. The Sacred Sun clan's connection with the world beyond worlds has already been broken for the time being. Still, this radiant light sect possesses great strength and profound legacies, having descended into the 8 extremities world for the first time. If they have the intention, they will be able to accurately locate the 8 extremities world and descend once more on their own accord." Yan Zhaoga raised his brows slightly. The forces that have descended this time may only be the tip of the iceberg. This deduction was based on the strength of that person who had nearly borrowed Huang Jia's strength to descend with his full power back at the world illuminating peak. This person was also the master of the Radiant Light sect, whom Huang Jia had spoken of. If this person was the strongest in the Radiant Light sect, then the situation would still be slightly better. If the Radiant Light sect had even stronger experts, then they would have to guess the Radiant Light sect's strength even higher. Hearing this, everyone's expression became solemn. Zhang Kuan and He Ning were equally worried. Now that things had come to this, the enmity between them and the Radiant Light sect of the world beyond worlds was clearly already irreconcilable. Thus, they could only think of a way to deal with it. He Ning knit her brows tightly. While it is impossible for those from the world beyond worlds to surpass the 3rd level of the martial saint realm, if many experts descend at once, it would similarly be a calamity. Hearing his words, Yan Zhaoga was deeply convinced. Previously, when he swept away all his enemies and obtained a complete victory, he did not lose his mind. While the extreme Yang seal was extremely powerful, it also took up a great amount of energy to use. At the same time, it could only be used for a single strike. After being used, it would fall into slumber once more, unable to be awakened for a very long time. Meanwhile, the great extinguishing chi within the myriad dragon palace could erupt in one go, being a one-time deal. However, after the problem of the nirvana chi was solved, he could freely use the true dragon chi that he had obtained to improve his strength. However, refining and absorbing the dragon chi for his own use required a process and time. Yan Zhaoga's mind was currently very calm. Counting Deng's son, whose cultivation base had been suppressed by the power of dimensions, 3 experts of the 3rd level of the martial saint realm had descended this time. What if next time there were 8 or 10 of them, or even more? Of course, it was not that there was no chance for things to turn for the better. For example, if his father Yen Di could break through to the 2nd level of the martial saint realm within a short period of time, things would be much easier then. If Yen Di had attained the third level of the martial saint realm, Yen Zhaoge believed that it would be useless no matter how many enemies of the same cultivation level descended. As for Yen Zhaoge himself, if he had sufficient time, as his strength rose a step further, he would also not have to fear his opponents. Now, he needed time and opportunity, Yen Zhaoge said. The Radiant Light sect is far from the only power in the world beyond worlds. Their mortal enemies exist within as well. It is not that the Radiant Light sect is invincible and without worries. He took out the paper fan he had obtained from the dragon's tomb, opened it, and showed the fan to everyone. Dim Darkness sect. Feng, Yunsheng, Fu Enshu, and the others exchanged looks. Yen Zhaoge nodded. That's right, the Dim Darkness sect. When I obtained this paper fan, some of the will of the fan's original owner still remained within. His greatest regret before his death was that he had not been able to personally witness the destruction of the Radiant Light sect. From his tone and the contents of his words, they are irreconcilable mortal enemies. While the Dim Darkness sect might not be able to surpass the Radiant Light sect, they are still a power of the same level at the very least. Hearing this, everyone fell into deep thought. Elder Qin asked, "You mean that we should try to form a connection with the Dim Darkness sect, borrowing their strength to stand against the Radiant Light sect?" "Yes, and also no," Yen Zhaoge said. "How would it be so easy to borrow their strength? Even if we want to, they would first have to be willing first. While the Radiant Light sect and the Dim Darkness sect are mortal enemies, if the Radiant Light sect wants to deal with us, the Dim Darkness sect might not necessarily help us. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. This is established on the premise that there is not much of a difference in our cultivation levels, that we are all on the same level." Yen Zhaoge spread his palms apart. "Otherwise, if we rashly go looking for them, they would only look down on us or ignore us. They might even covet our treasures like the Radiant Light sect. Still, since their relationship is so bad, and they are massive entities of the same level, if an intense battle erupts between them, it would be very hard for the Radiant Light sect to find trouble with us. After all, we are not clay to be trifled with." Yen Zhaoge closed his fan with a clack. "The frame of this fan is made from the legendary world beyond worlds. With this treasure, even before reaching the fourth level of the martial saint realm, one might still be able to head to the world beyond worlds." Everyone was shocked, Fu Enshu asking, "You want to head to the world beyond worlds now?" Yen Zhaoge waved his hands. "Of course not in such a hurry. Even if I really want to go, I would still have to spend some time preparing. It is not that simple. First, I have to completely stabilize the situation in the Eight Extremities world. Then, I still have to wait for my father to emerge from the seal of the East Sea before making further plans. Still, it is definitely better to go to the world beyond worlds sooner rather than later, understanding the situation there as soon as possible." Saying thus, Yen Zhaoge narrowed his eyes into slits. The purple sun martial St. Zhang Chao's successful ascension is still a threat at the end of the day. More importantly, the extreme Yin crown has been brought to the world beyond worlds by them as well. This matter definitely cannot be let off just like that. Feng Yunsheng did not look dejected, as she merely nodded calmly upon hearing his words. Yen Zhaoge then sighed. "Also, my mother very likely came from there, and may be returning there now as well. I do not know the specifics of the situation. I have long since wanted to go search for her as well. There was no way to do so before, but there is finally hope now." Hearing his words, Fu Enshu turned her head away. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoge smiled bitterly as he shrugged. Zhang Kuan and the others who had a general understanding of the situation with Yen Di, Xue Chuqing, and Fu Enshu were all rendered speechless for a time. Yen Zhaoge straightened his expression, asking, "Right, how is second apprentice uncle's condition now?" He Ning said he retrieved the clear qi robe to face the enemy earlier. Still, he should be fine. I just checked on him, and his condition is still rather stable. Still, his injuries are still very serious, and it is unknown when he will awaken. Yan Zhaoga said, I'll go take a look at him. With the Northern Ocean clone's physique of the second level of the Martial Saint realm, Yan Zhaoga was able to use many healing methods that required a rather high cultivation base to execute at this moment. After helping Fang Zhuan for a while more, he saw that the effects were virtually immediate as Fang Zhuan's complexion immediately improved greatly. At the same time, Broad Creed Mountain was also dealing with the aftermath of the attack on their mountain. With the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall both destroyed, the situation in the Eight Extremities world abruptly changed as well. The entire world was shocked, all caught unprepared. To be continued. Chapter 593. With the descent of the Radiant Light Sect experts, their strength would be sufficient to sweep through the entire Eight Extremities world. The Sacred Sun clan believed that the situation had already been decided. Therefore, on the way to Broad Creed Mountain, they spread the news throughout the world, even inviting others to head to Broad Creed Mountain together. Within Jade Sea City, Elder Yu and the other longtime elders of Jade Sea City all had heavy hearts. World beyond worlds and whatnot. Is it really like that? I'm afraid it's not empty words. Otherwise, the Sacred Sun clan itself would become the greatest joke under the heavens. Could it be that this is a ploy by them to purposefully disrupt us before their target of attack is actually our Jade Sea City or Infinite Boundless Mountain, with both the City Lord and the Jade Sea Pill Heart Sword not present? It is already very difficult for us to protect ourselves by guarding the Jade Sea Limitless Grand Formation. If we want to rush out and assist Broad Creed Mountain, we really do not have the strength to do so. If the news is true, the Sacred Sun clan's actions are intended to intimidate all the heroes of the world, completely establishing their position as the absolute ruler of the Eight Extremities world in the future. With Broad Creed Mountain destroyed, Yan Di, Song Wuliang, and the others taken care of in the Seal of the East Sea, and Huang Guanglia successfully returning, even if the Radiant Light Sect's experts all retreated or did not interfere, the Sacred Sun clan would still have sufficient confidence in sweeping through all beneath the heavens. In the previous Great Tribulations, the losses that Jade Sea City had suffered were amongst the highest amongst the 6 great sacred grounds. Now that their experts had fallen, hearing such news at this moment, they felt even more despair. Elder Yu, the sole remaining long-time transcending mortality martial grandmaster of Jade Sea City, sighed, Currently, there is nothing we can do. There is news that the Heavenly Thunder Hall's Shun Li has left the mountain. It is unknown whether he is hurrying over to Broad Creed Mountain or coming to deal with us, or perhaps to tie down Turbid Wave Pavilion. The expressions of those of Jade Sea City were all extremely grave. Right at this moment, a disciple suddenly rushed over with an extremely strange expression, requesting to see Elder Yu and the others. Senior Apprentice Granduncle, Senior Apprentice Uncle, Senior Apprentice Uncle, we have just received news that the Heavenly Thunder Hall has been destroyed. Elder Yu and the others were all shocked. What did you say? The person who spoke had a look of disbelief on his face as well. The Lord of the Heavenly Thunder Hall, the Green Thunder Marshal Saint Shunli, was slain on the spot. The people of Jade Sea City all felt disbelief. With Yan Di and the others temporarily unable to leave the Seal of the East Sea, the Eight Extremities world currently shouldn't have such an existence that could completely flatten the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Who did it? An elder of Jade Sea City asked anxiously. Could it be that the Sacred Sun clan led the Radiant Light Sect into attacking the Heavenly Thunder Hall first? But that shouldn't be the case. The reporting Jade Sea City martial practitioner's throat bobbed as he said softly in an extremely strange tone, I heard that it was Yan Zhaoga. Who? Broad Creed Mountain. Grand Rider of Dragon, Yen Zhaoga. There was dead silence in the hall. During this period of time, the mountain gate of Turbid Wave Pavilion was no longer as peaceful as it was in the past. On the highest floor of the pavilion, a tall and slender woman with ordinary features but an extraordinary aura was leaning against the railing and looking into the distance. Behind her stood a group of Turbid Wave Pavilion upper echelon experts, their expressions somewhat complicated. Today, they had received too much shocking news. In the world beyond worlds, the appearance of the radiant light sect caused everyone to feel suffocated. With Broad Creed Mountain facing the pressure of a great army, what should Turbid Wave Pavilion do next? Everyone was discussing this with different opinions. However, the news that soon followed was that Broad Creed Mountain disciple Yen Zhaoga had flattened the Heavenly Thunder Hall, slaying thunder moving all directions, Shun Li on the spot. After confirming that there was no mistake in the news, everyone, Pavilion Lord and Qinglin included, was stunned. Broad Creed Mountain disciple Yen Zhaoga. The word disciple should have been removed. Broad Creed Mountain's Yen Zhaoga. That youth who was only in his 20s had really done all this? While they had long since known that Yen Zhaoga was extraordinary, also accepting the various miraculous feats of Yen Zhaoga over the years, the news this time still left them feeling that it was inconceivable. It was just that it felt like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. The crisis that Broad Creed Mountain was facing this time was far from something that the Heavenly Thunder Hall could compare to. If the Sacred Sun clan did not exaggerate, it was a powerful force that even the entire 8 Extremities world combined would not be able to face. Earlier, chaos had erupted in the East Sea and the Earth domain. The 8 Extremities world had been in a precarious state as they had barely managed to tide through it. However, if the Radiant Light Sex forces that had descended into the 8 Extremities world this time wanted to destroy this place, that would indisputably be the greatest tribulation in the history of this world, one that could not be resisted. Pavilion Lord, are we just going to do nothing like this? Just wait? Someone asked. Another longtime elder of Turbid Wave Pavilion asked, instead, what can we do now? The gap between the two sides is too great. The person who had spoken first said slowly, it is precisely because the gap is too great that we have to do something. Otherwise, it might not be Jade Sea City and infinite boundless mountains turn after Broad Creed Mountain, instead being my Turbid Wave Pavilion. The other party's gaze turned cold. Could it be that you, that person nodded, the situation is beyond our control, and we have no choice but to lower our heads? If the Sacred Sun clan can do it, why can't we? We can even try to replace the Sacred Sun clan's position. Everyone was shocked, their expressions all different. Some were unwilling, some furious, some hesitant, some in agreement, some in deep thought. Turbid Wave Pavilion's Pavilion Lord and Qinglin remained silent throughout. Just as they were debating, news suddenly arrived. A streak of light hovered in midair, and Qinglin's expression was solemn as she extended a finger and tapped lightly on it. The light dispersed, condensing into a line of words. After seeing the words clearly, everyone simultaneously fell silent, indescribably shocked expressions appearing on their faces as they could only feel that this was preposterous and inconceivable. Even Qinglin was rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied. 3 experts of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint Realm and 2 experts of the 2nd level of the Martial Saint Realm were all exterminated by Broad Creed Mountain. The Sacred Sun clan exterminated, no, not exterminated by Broad Creed Mountain, but by Yen Zhaoga. They finally regained their wits with great difficulty. Exchanging looks as their first reaction was that this was preposterous. Someone directly sent down orders to verify the veracity of the news. However many times they checked, the news was the same. While the Turbid Wave Pavilion experts finally digested this news with great difficulty, they did not relax, as they instead grew even more solemn. Some even felt fear. How exactly did he do it? Being able to slay even such powerful existences. How terrifying must broad Creed Mountain's Yen Zhaoga be? Yen Zhaoga, that youth who was only in his 20s. Exactly what kind of power did he possess? Someone murmured. The earlier topic was not wrong, just that the target of our discussion has changed. The main point is still, where exactly should our clan go from here on out? Everyone fell silent. At Infinite Boundless Mountain, the chief Chu Yen, who had originally been in secluded cultivation, still having yet to recover from his heavy injuries, had already left seclusion at this moment. His expression was complex, and it was the same for the Infinite Boundless Mountain elders before him. They all faced each other in silence. After a long time, the still very pale and weak Chu Yen stood up. Contact Broad Creed Mountain. This old man intends to pay them a visit. Someone asked, Martial Uncle Sect Leader, your injury. Chu Yen said slowly, this old man can still move. At this time, even if I can't move, as long as I still have breath, you will have to carry me to Broad Creed Mountain, even if you have to. Chapter 594. Pavilion Lord and is polite. This Yen is not someone fond of battle. It is just that the Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall think that my Broad Creed Mountain is weak and easy to bully. In that case, they will have to pay the price for their arrogance. Yen Zhaoga cupped his hands towards and Qinglin before him, and Qinglin solemnly returned the greeting. The Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall have committed perverse acts. They naturally deserve to be punished. Looking at Yen Zhaoga before her, she could not help but sigh emotionally, while elders like Zhang Kuan and He Ning, who held high positions and authority, were still present. The current Broad Creed Mountain was clearly under the control of this youth before her. Even when she met him, he was the one in charge. After seeing Yen Zhaoga, and Qinglin vaguely felt that while he was still in essence Talisman Martial Grandmaster, his cultivation base already shocked the heavens and shook the earth, as even transcending mortality Martial Grandmasters might not be able to stand against him. While she still did not understand how exactly Yen Zhaoga had been able to slay experts like Deng Sun, Sun Hao, and Lu Feng, who completely suppressed the entire Eight Extremities world, and Qinglin naturally did not dare to take it lightly. In her eyes, the youth before her was very possibly the strongest expert of the current Eight Extremities world. Deng Sun and the others had been able to dominate the Eight Extremities world. Then, how terrifying would the person who had slain them all be? Moreover, even if Yen Zhaoga did not have such terrifying methods, just looking at himself, having reached the 9th level of the Martial Grandmaster realm at such a young age, the late Essence Talisman stage, such talent and strength was unparalleled throughout history. Geniuses who had yet to mature could not be considered geniuses. However, Yen Zhaoga had already matured to such an extent that it was sufficient for bigwigs, like in Qinglin, to view him as an equal. What reassured in Qinglin was that while it had always been said that Yen Zhaoga was arrogant and domineering from the looks of it now, he still didn't have a tyrannical, domineering air to him. Broad Creed Mountain's battle had shocked the world, repelling the Radiant Light sect of the higher worlds and exterminating the Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall, who had always been enemies with them. It was already indisputable that they reigned supreme beneath the heavens. Even if the remaining Holy Lands joined forces, they would not be able to resist. Everyone could only express their obedience and submission, but how would they get along with each other, and how far they would go? This made people worry. If Broad Creed Mountain wanted to take whatever they wanted, it would be no different from their clan being exterminated, and they could only helplessly resist. However, from the looks of it now, at least Yen Zhaoga himself did not have such intentions. According to Qinglin's observations, the current style of Broad Creed Mountain was somewhat similar to that era when the exalted Heaven Shaker Zhandonga had ascended to the peak that year. In the past, when Jean Donga ascended to the top, it was true that no one dared to disobey him, but he did not overly oppress and plunder the other powers. Only Black Nightmare Mountain had attacked Jean Donga when he was in seclusion, causing Jean Donga to come out and destroy Black Nightmare Mountain's orthodoxy. While the Sacred Sun clan had ill intentions, they had not truly made a move. In the end, the Purple Sun Marshal Saint Zhang Chao had imprisoned himself in the southern Desolation volcano to atone for his crimes. Thus, Jean Donga had not made things too difficult for the Sacred Sun clan. However, even exalted Han Tian wasn't this young back then. And Qinglin sighed emotionally. While Yen Zhaoge is domineering, his ambitions probably do not lie in the Eight Extremities world. It is no wonder that he is so peaceful and open-minded now. The Eight Extremities world is also unable to contain his talent, and Qinglin left Broad Creed Mountain. As she walked, she turned and gazed, the great rider of dragons, one hand supporting the heavens. The painting saint probably would not have expected that the latter half of the words would come true so quickly, right? One hand supporting the heavens, one hand covering the heavens. After sending in Qinglin off, Yen Zhaoge looked at Fu Enshu and the others beside him, smiling. The heaven-cleaving axe can be given to infinite boundless mountain. The heaven-sealing gorges, first seat Elder Gong, said, "We have already seen the entire process of the heaven spying orb. Without Changzheng, Li Jingtu would also have been hard-pressed to escape death. At the end of the day, the heaven-cleaving axe still ended up in the hands of the Sacred Sun clan. The Sacred Sun clan snatched the heaven-cleaving axe from their hands based on their own ability. Our clan snatched it from the Sacred Sun clan, not owing them anything. What we owe is Li Jingtu's life. Now, Changzheng has already been executed as well." Yen Zhaoge waved his hands, saying casually, "We are allies at the end of the day," while he was deceived into boarding the ship by me. Ever since we formed an alliance, we can still be considered to have advanced and retreated together. Killing and arson is fine, but it is best not to burn the bridge after crossing the river. Having gone through trials and tribulations together before, we can still share prosperity and prosperity together now. Of course, we also shouldn't give it to them so easily. People often don't cherish things that are too easily obtained, and might even take a yard when given an inch, not knowing how much they weigh. Hearing his words, Elder Gong exchanged glances with Fu Enshu and the others, all of them nodding slowly. Yen Zhaoge's expression turned serious as he continued, "To our clan, a sacred artifact is indeed precious. However, with the 4 seas and 8 desolations, now we can gather a large amount of the resources of the entire Eight Extremities world. The skyrocketing strength of a martial scholar is right before our eyes." He said slowly, one word at a time, "I now have sufficient confidence in improving the internal crystal furnace once more." The spirits of Fu Enshu and the others all rose. Yen Zhaoge was not speaking without thinking. Even if Yen Di still remained in the East Sea, now Yen Zhaoge indeed had the confidence of improving the internal crystal furnace once more. While he himself had yet to step into the Martial Saint realm, he had the Northern Ocean clone. Like that, the improvement of the internal crystal furnace was a sure thing. The mass production of high-grade spirit artifacts was already no longer a castle in the air. The only limiting factor was whether or not there were sufficient materials. And now that Broad Creed Mountain reigned supreme under the heavens, the entire Eight Extremities world within their grasp, even if the vast lands were not directly governed by Broad Creed Mountain, instead being controlled by Turbid Wave Pavilion and the other powers, whatever materials Broad Creed Mountain wanted, they would definitely be given the highest priority. The skyrocketing strength of Broad Creed Mountain was already right before their eyes. Sacred artifacts were still hard to forge, but with the numerous true dragon corpses in the dragon tomb, as well as the upgraded internal crystal furnace, as well as Yen Zhaoga's artifact forging techniques that could be greatly displayed through the Northern Ocean clone, he could similarly look forward to them. It must be known that as Yen Zhaoga saw it, the materials obtained in the dragon tomb could even be used to forge mid-grade sacred artifacts. It was just that his clan currently did not have any experts above the third level of the Martial Saint realm. However, Yen Zhaoga did not feel any heartache. Treasures that could be converted into cash in time and used directly were truly valuable treasures. While it seemed a bit of a pity, with the treasures he was currently using to raise his strength, he would naturally be able to compete for even better things in the future. Elder Qin said, "There's still one more thing. Allowing Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City to enter the Thunder Domain is originally nothing much, but the Zhao region of the Thunder Domain's 6 regions." Yen Zhaoga laughed. "My father and I have always treated our hometown as the Central Heaven region, and it is the same for many of our clansmen now. There are also those who want to return to the Zhao region of the Thunder Domain. We will naturally not make things difficult for them. With the current situation, Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City should also not make things difficult for our clansmen after occupying the Zhao region. Instead, it is these people who might become lawless citizens in their territory, acting domineeringly and unbridled," Yen Zhaoga said. "However, the former location of the Heavenly Thunder Hall is something that the two of them cannot enter. There is a dimensional passageway opened by Bald Shin there, its destination unknown, having been temporarily sealed by me. Now is still not the time for them to enter. The seal is being guarded. Do not touch it." Elder Qin nodded slightly. "Since you already have a plan, this old man will not say anything more." Afterwards, news from the Thunder Domain caused all of Broad Creed Mountain to chuckle, as if there was some sort of tacit understanding between them. While Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City divided up the Thunder Domain, they only took 2 regions each. The 2 most central regions of the Thunder Domain, the Underworld region and the Zhao region, were left empty. The Underworld continent was also known as the Yen continent, and together with the Zhao continent, they were known as the land of Yen and Zhao. Yen and Zhao had many warriors who sang sorrowful songs. This was the origin of Yen Zhaoga's name. In the 8 Extremities world, there was currently no longer any power other than Broad Creed Mountain who dared to set foot here. To be continued. Chapter 595. Yen Zhaoga had benefited greatly from the great battle with the Heavenly Thunder Hall, the Sacred Sun Clan, and the Radiant Light Sect. The Heavenly Thunder Hall and the Sacred Sun Clan had both been destroyed by Yen Zhaoga, and the treasures that the 2 sacred grounds had accumulated over the years had naturally been confiscated by Yen Zhaoga. As compared to solitary practitioners, the accumulated treasures of the 2 sacred grounds were naturally much more abundant. It could be said that Yen Zhaoga had benefited the most from the battle outside the Dragon Tomb. Yen Zhaoga naturally kept all of these accumulated treasures without standing on ceremony. Meanwhile, the 5 great experts of the Radiant Light sect had all been slain by Yen Zhaoga. Their belongings that had not been destroyed had all fallen into Yen Zhaoga's hands. The problem is that they were damaged a little badly. Yen Zhaoga smiled bitterly. Deng Sun and Lu Feng had died in the Myriad Dragon Palace. The great chi of extermination erupting as their accompanying sacred artifacts had both been destroyed within the Myriad Dragon Palace. Lu Feng had been directly crushed along with his sacred artifact to the point where not even ash remained. Deng Sun had barely managed to escape with his life, but his sacred artifact had been destroyed as well. Sun Hao and Lu Feng had met the same fate, as he had been destroyed along with his body by the extreme Yang seal. As for the other 2, Yang Zhanhua and Jin Jia, Yang Zhanhua's Dawn Sun Crown had been successfully obtained by Yen Zhaoga, but Jin Jia had not been accompanied by a sacred artifact. looking at the dawn sun crown in his hands. Yen Zhaoga stroked his lower chin rather playfully. Luckily, there were still other gains. Other than the dawn sun crown, Yen Zhaoga had obtained an extremely rare treasure, the divine crow golden plume, after having flattened the headquarters of the sacred Sun clan. The divine crow golden plume was the plume of the divine beast of legend, the three-legged golden crow. Also, it was not the feather of an ordinary golden crow, as it was one of the 3 plume feathers on the head of the golden crow, being the most precious and miraculous. After the great calamity, Yen Zhaoga had not even seen the feather of a golden crow in the 8 extremities world, let alone the divine crow golden plume. The fire crow bloodline of the floating life world contained a first-grade demonic beast bloodline that contained some traces of the golden crow's bloodline, possessing the ability to incinerate the heavens and boil the seas. Yet it was still much. This divine crow golden plume should have been bestowed to the sacred Sun clan by the Radiant Light sect as a core material for forging a new sacred artifact. Yen Zhaoga stroked the jet-black feather that flickered with a golden light, feeling the great power that was deeply concealed yet still shook one's heart. The saint weapon refined from this treasure will be even stronger than the great sun heaven-measuring ruler. It seems like they are waiting for Huang Guanglia to return from the Eastern Sea to make preparations. Yen Zhaoga smiled. Other than this divine crow golden plume, there are also many other treasures that the 8 extremities world does not possess. I wonder if it was because of the extreme Yin crown and the extreme Yang seal, or because of Huang Jia. With the 3 of them joining hands, they even suppressed the abnormalities of the fire pith vein in the southern underground palace, sweeping away the obstruction of the sacred Sun clan's martial grandmasters in their breakthrough into the martial saint realm. If it is ultimately the sacred Sun clan who unifies the 8 extremities world, with a large amount of resources, the sacred Sun clan's strength will soar before long, truly becoming a highly valued branch of the Radiant Light sect. Yen Zhaoga shook his head slightly, lightly tapping the divine crow golden plume with his finger. Let me think about how I should use this thing, how I can bring out its greatest value. As he pondered, a massive black silhouette squeezed in through the door, nearly breaking through the wall before wanting to slam headfirst into Yen Zhaoga's embrace. Yen Zhaoga rolled his eyes exasperatedly, turned smaller first. That black silhouette's claws left the ground as it leapt through the air, its figure rapidly shrinking as it finally plunged into Yen Zhaoga's embrace. It was fluffy like a meatball, a pair of dark circles around its eyes. Now, it rolled over comfortably in Yen Zhaoga's embrace before blinking at him. It was precisely Pan Pan, whom he had not seen for a long time. When Yen Zhaoga had hurried to the Earth domain to deal with the crevice to the 9 underworlds, he had left him at Broad Creed Mountain. Afterwards, he had not returned to the mountain, instead hurrying to the East Sea, without stopping. Afterwards, the seal of the East Sea had been formed. In order to avoid the aftershocks of its power, Yen Zhaoga had saved Fu Enshu and fled to the vast ocean world together. It had indeed been some time since he had seen this little fella before him. Yen Zhaoga rather missed him as he reached out and tapped the tip of his nose. Pan Pan lightly licked Yen Zhaoga's fingertip, his body rubbing against it comfortably. Yen Zhaoga appraised this lazy fella. "Oh, you seem to have grown much fatter than before." "Young master, without you keeping him in check, this fella's appetite is getting more and more uncontrollable. Isn't that why he's fat?" A tall man walked in from the door, saying helplessly, "Much of my personal savings have been ruined by this fella. Young master, you have to compensate me." This man was none other than who. Back then, he had escorted Fang Zhuan back to Broad Creed Mountain on Yen Zhaoga's orders. Afterwards, he had set off for the East Sea. Who knew that just having arrived there, he would receive news that the seal had been completed and that Yen Zhaoga's whereabouts were unknown, his fate unknown. Hu and the others of Broad Creed Mountain had searched the outer East Sea for nothing, as they could only helplessly return to the mountain in the end. These days, Ahu had also been rather worried about Yen Zhaoga's safety. Now that Yen Zhaoga had finally returned, Ahu's heart that had always been hanging in the air could finally be set at ease. After no longer worrying, Ahu now had the mind to care about some things that he had overlooked earlier. For example, the many rare treasures that he had accumulated had all been ruined by Pan Pan. Many of them were top-grade treasures that I had kept for myself. Young master, you probably don't have them anymore. Ahu scowled miserably, that miserable look of his, as though he had just been gang-raped by more than 10 big men. Yen Zhaoga glared. Good, you indeed embezzled quite a bit in the past. This time, you've confessed it yourself. Ahu pulled back the corners of his mouth, as though he had bitten his own tongue. No, young master, Yen Zhaoga waved his hands. No need for this, and that, you also said that there are some things that I probably don't have anymore. If you still have them, just take them out obediently. Ahu was filled with grief and indignation. Gone, gone. Young master, they were all ruined by that glutton Pan Pan. Yen Zhaoga shot him a sidelong glance. Really gone? Ahu hurriedly nodded. Really, really gone. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel so heartache. Yen Zhaoga smiled. Forget it. Since that's the case, I'll give you a good job. Currently, while our clan can't be said to be rich in the 4 seas and can take whatever we want from the 8 extremities world, most of the treasures in this world are very easy for us to obtain. Follow this list of mine and make a trip to various places, bringing the things back. Ahu received the list and looked through it carefully. Young master, with your and Broad Creed Mountain's current positions, as long as you contact the various sacred grounds, they will naturally help you collect the things, then send them over to the Heaven Domain. As Yen Zhaoga had said to Hu, this was indeed an extremely good job. Along the way, no one could say anything about it. Yen Zhaoga said, there are a few things that are in the Zhao region of the Thunder Domain. Hu was slightly taken aback. Yen Zhaoga had even raised the Zhao region's yans to the ground, trampling over the Thunder Domain once. It was naturally impossible that he didn't dare or couldn't go to the Zhao region. He suddenly understood. Young master, his hometown was also the Zhao region of the Thunder Domain. Hu didn't care much about his hometown. His family had been serving Yen Di since his grandfather's time. He had grown up with Yen Zhaoga in the Central Heaven region, since young, wherever Yen Di and Yen Zhaoga were. That was where he returned to his roots. However, his grandfather and father had both wished to be buried in their ancestral homeland before their deaths. Yen Zhaoga patted Ahu's shoulder. It wasn't convenient in the past, but now you can go wherever you want to go. Ahu sucked in a deep breath, the mischievous look on his face as he nodded solemnly. Yes, young master. Chapter 596. Ahu packed up and began to prepare for the moving of his elder's burial. Once everything was ready, he set off. Remaining on Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoga also paid attention to the situation of the 8 extremities world as he dealt with the matters on hand. The Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall had both fallen. If only the leaders and experts of a sect had fallen, as long as they didn't die, there would always be a day when they would rise again. If the mountain gate was destroyed, it didn't mean that it was the end of the world and the end of the orthodoxy. However, in a situation where the wall was down, virtually all of their experts having perished, also having lost the protection of their clan's geographical location, it would be difficult for the Sacred Sun Clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall to even struggle. The die-hard elements could only flee and hide, not even needing Broad Creed Mountain to make a move. Infinite Boundless Mountain and Jade Sea City would be able to force them to the point of exhaustion. Gradually, there were also those of the Sacred Sun clan or the Heavenly Thunder Hall who, under the pressure of survival, abandoned their clans, pledging their loyalty to other powers, switching allegiances. At the end of the day, it was Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain who had destroyed their Dao lineage, asking them to directly switch allegiance to Broad Creed Mountain. There was basically no one who would have such thick skin. Therefore, most of those of the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall joined Turbid Wave Pavilion, Infinite Boundless Mountain, and Jade Sea City. Broad Creed Mountain didn't care about this. These people should have already changed sex, forsaking their ancestral legacy. The first thing they couldn't tolerate were the die-hard members of the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall. And if they harbored ill intentions, they would first not be able to get past Turbid Wave Pavilion and the others. With the control of the various sacred grounds, the possibility of them rising from the ashes was infinitely close to zero, unless the Radiant Light sect sent a great number of experts down and destroyed Broad Creed Mountain, then pressuring the other great sects with their might. However, if that really happened, the Radiant Light sect would be more likely to choose a new spokesperson from Turbid Wave Pavilion and the other three clans, not necessarily supporting the rebuilding of the Sacred Sun clan. In the following days, Yen Zhaoga focused on his plans to prevent this possibility from coming true. The entire Broad Creed Mountain was mobilized at the same time, wanting to strengthen their control over the Eight Extremities world, digesting the fruits of victory from the destruction of the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall, understanding the influence of their enemies in the Fire Domain, the Thunder Domain, and the other places was not something that could be accomplished with just a few words. Much concrete work and a long period of time were required for this to be accomplished. In Broad Creed Mountain, the Myriad Dragon Palace was directly suppressed atop the Water Ridge Peak of the Back Mountains, where Yen Zhaoga himself resided. With Yen Zhaoga and the Myriad Dragon Palace, the heaven-sealing gorge beneath Water Ridge Peak would naturally be safe. Like this, Elder Gong, who held the position of first seat elder of the heaven-sealing gorge, was freed to head to the Fire Domain and other places. Currently, Broad Creed Mountain's deterrent power had skyrocketed to an unprecedented level. However, its higher echelon experts who could take charge of an area and defend it alone were comparatively lacking. Now that the power and influence of the sect had greatly expanded, a powerful elder like Elder Gong could be of great use. In the previous great battles, Broad Creed Mountain had suffered severe casualties. Now, they felt like they were being overstretched, which was something that could not be avoided. However, Yen Zhaoga was not anxious about this. Within the Myriad Dragon Palace, he and the Northern Ocean clone sat facing each other, watching as the internal crystal furnace shuddered before mightily opening. Streaks of bright spiritual light shot out from within, enveloping the entire Myriad Dragon Palace. The door of the palace did not close, multicolored spiritual chi overflowing from within, illuminating the gloomy heaven-sealing gorge down below, which the light of day was never visible all year round. Seeing the roiling multicolored light and overflowing spiritual chi of the back mountain, the longtime elders of Broad Creed Mountain, who were still on the mountain, were all overjoyed. Success! Zhaoga has succeeded. Standing beside Yen Zhaoga, looking at the multicolored light shooting out of the internal crystal furnace, Feng Yinqing's face was also filled with admiration. I have never seen high-grade spirit artifacts being forged so easily and so quickly. Xikong Qing and Ing Longtu also stood within the palace, the two also looking at the internal crystal furnace in pleasant surprise. Everyone knew what the scene before them signified. Broad Creed Mountain could mass-produce high-grade spirit artifacts to the entire Eight Extremities world. This was an extremely terrifying thing. All along, sacred artifacts had been hard to come by, with high-grade spirit artifacts being the best weapons. Also, they were similarly difficult to forge. in sacred grounds, transcending mortality martial grandmasters and essence talisman martial grandmasters could only barely produce one each, rarely having any surplus. Now, however, Broad Creed Mountain might be able to arm their essence talisman martial grandmasters to the teeth. With too many essence talisman martial grandmasters having been depleted and lacking in manpower, equipping the essence spirit martial grandmasters with high-grade spirit artifacts would similarly allow their strength to rise in a heaven-shaking, earth-overturning manner. This way, Broad Creed Mountain would definitely be able to smoothly tide through the period of time required for its younger generation to mature after the death or injury of its higher echelon experts. Yan Zhaoge said, "It has indeed succeeded." He smiled as he looked at Sikong Qing. "The promise I made to all of you back then can also be considered to have completely come true now." Hearing his words, Sikong Qing was slightly dazed as she thought of the scene of Yan Zhaoge displaying the internal crystal furnace for the first time in front of everyone that year. At that time, it had still been before the War of the Eastern Tang, with Feng Yunsheng and Ing Longtu still not having entered the clan. Thinking of the past, the usually cold Sikong Qing also sighed, rather emotionally. In the blink of an eye, more than 4 years have passed. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, heartfelt admiration surfaced within her gaze. First, not mentioning the matter of the internal crystal furnace, senior apprentice brother Yan, your cultivation speed these past few years has truly left one gasping in amazement. I am completely convinced. By the side, Feng Yunsheng also nodded. A late essence talisman, martial grandmaster, this is unprecedented. Ah. Yan Zhaoge smiled. The two of you are also not bad. Yunsheng should still be a few days away from her 22nd birthday, but she is already a late Xiantian martial scholar. Meng Wan is also currently at this cultivation level. You were delayed for 2 years in between. Junior apprentice sister Sikong should be 21, right? She is also already a mid-Xiantian martial scholar. Yan Zhaoge patted Ing Longtu by the side. The heavy responsibility of breaking through my father's record as the youngest martial grandmaster will very likely still fall on Han Long Er's shoulders. Still, the age at which the two of you became martial grandmasters should not be older than mine. Just don't meet a bottleneck, being stuck for a few years at a time. Sikong Qing said, but after stepping into the martial grandmaster realm, senior apprentice brother Yan, your speed of improvement is really too fast. Even Chief isn't as fast as you. It is really hard to imagine that you were able to leap into the 9th level of the martial grandmaster realm, the late essence talisman stage, in less than 3 years. Senior apprentice brother, Yan, you should only just be 25 now, right? Yan Zhaoge smiled, shaking his head. I'm almost 27. 2 months in the 8 extremities world, a year in the vast ocean world. Other than that, in the Dragon Tomb, some of the space-time flows very quickly, fragmented. Actually, I have spent quite a bit of time within. Feng Yunsheng and Sikong Qing exchanged glances, shaking their heads in unison. That is already an unbelievable speed. You must know that the core direct disciples of the various sacred grounds, under normal circumstances, would only be at our current cultivation bases at your age. Other than Chief, there has never been a late essence talisman martial grandmaster below the age of 40 in the 8 extremities world before this. Meanwhile, you are directly below the age of 30. Yan Zhaoge smiled. I've made a fool of myself. Seeing his smug look, Feng Yunsheng felt both exasperated and amused, while Sikong Qing repeatedly shook her head, and Ing Longtu had a look of worship on his face. After laughing, Yan Zhaoge looked outside the myriad dragon palace, gazing east. Speaking of father, after a period of time, when the time is right, I will be making a trip to the East Sea. Perhaps I will be able to stabilize the seal earlier, allowing father and the others to come out earlier. Chapter 597. A certain amount of time was needed for the seal of the East Sea to be completely stabilized. After the seal had stabilized, Yen Di and the others would be able to withdraw from within. As the person who had researched the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation the most in this world, Yen Zhaoga had a way to get them out prematurely. Still, the consequence of that would be that the seal would become unstable, with the flame devils possibly breaking out. Deng Sun and the others of the Radiant Light sect had thought of this earlier. It was just that they had been confident of being able to take care of the flame devils as well. Now that the extreme young seal could not be used, Yen Zhaoga decided to be more cautious. Still, his understanding of the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation was incomparable to others, as he had a way to help them stabilize the seal prematurely and extricate themselves from within. It was just that this method was related to the circulation of the spiritual chi of the 8 extremities world's earth veins. He would have to wait for the flow of the earth veins to change, waiting for the right time to arrive. Yen Zhaoga raised his cultivation base in peace over this period of time while sorting through the various treasures he had obtained, making good use of them. As time passed, they on Broad Creed Mountain vaguely felt an aura within the myriad dragon palace growing more and more valiant as it was terrifying. Within the great hall that was filled with dragon chi, Yen Zhaoga and the Northern Ocean clone sat facing each other. Between the two was the internal crystal furnace. While it appeared very quiet at this moment, a powerful aura seemed to be unceasingly brewing and accumulating within. As time passed, that terrifying aura grew more and more valiant, shocking one to the core. The internal crystal furnace was still stable as Mount Tai, yet formed a contrast and disharmony that left one even more worried. The chi of true dragons within the myriad dragon palace condensed into a tangible form at this moment, transforming into numerous dragons that swam about unceasingly, emitting long roars that reverberated unceasingly. As that terrifying aura within the internal crystal furnace gradually approached its peak, Yen Zhaoga and the Northern Ocean clone punched out simultaneously. Majestic fist intent, agglomerated, and surged. The internal crystal furnace that had always been suppressed and brewing finally lost its calm, shaking mightily as its lid opened. Within the furnace, space seemed to have expanded infinitely as a golden spear lay within, densely covered with numerous dragon patterns that resembled dragon scales. Surrounding the spear were numerous complete true dragon skeletons that were bright and clear as crystals. As the dragon scales on the spear opened and closed, it was as if the spear had transformed into a living dragon. It soared into the sky, wanting to fly out of the internal crystal furnace. Even the true dragon skeletons in the surroundings seemed to have come to life, flying along with it. Now, guided by Yen Zhaoga, a great amount of true dragon chi of the myriad dragon palace shot towards the internal crystal furnace as well. The draconic chi sank, blocking the spear along with the true dragon skeleton within. Both of them converged within the internal crystal furnace. The Northern Ocean clone stood up and strode before the internal crystal furnace, his palms simultaneously closing the lid of the internal crystal furnace. The internal crystal furnace shook unceasingly as the Northern Ocean clone walked around it, punching out with every step he took. Streaks of Kunpeng silhouettes flew into the internal crystal furnace, causing the shaking of the internal crystal furnace to become even more shocking. After the dragon had punched of Yen Yang, the Yen dragon of a world, the northern sect Yang, sect of the dragon of He, of Hevoth of Yen sect of He. The lid of the internal crystal furnace opened. A streak of golden light shooting into the skies, piercing through the roof of the myriad dragon palace and into the horizon. There seemed to be a vast ocean within the golden light. Of that ocean of light, of which of the Kunpeng bobbed, and the true dragon rose and fell, the world seeming to have returned to ancient times as an aura of boundless vastness and desolation surged over, containing boundless, vast power within. If not for the Northern Ocean clone stabilizing and suppressing it, the internal crystal furnace would definitely have broken apart amidst the shaking. Yen Zhaoge strode forward, extending his hand into the internal crystal furnace before emerging with a spear that flickered with a half-gold, half-black luster. That spear was incomparably heavy, resembling the sky, and the sea as the ancient great wilderness was completely merged within. It was only Yen Zhaoge who cultivated in the cyclic heavenly scripture. If it were any other martial grandmaster, let alone wielding this spear, even lifting it would be a problem. Fish dragon spear. Ha! I did not invest so many good materials in it for nothing. Yen Zhaoge nodded satisfactorily. This spear is definitely an elite amongst low-grade sacred artifacts. The Northern Ocean clone received the fish dragon spear, the spear trembling as space itself shook as a black hole vaguely appeared at its tip. That incomparably heavy force shook the heavens and shook the earth. The aura of the sacred artifact shot straight into the skies, the pillar of light above the myriad dragon palace beginning to shine, gold and black intermingling. Seeing this shocking scene, all of Broad Creed Mountain felt impassioned, the birth of a sacred artifact. Currently, the slightest disturbance in Broad Creed Mountain would draw the close attention of the other powers. Seeing light filling the entire sky above Broad Creed Mountain, the power of a sacred artifact shaking the surrounding area, the hearts of those of the other powers could not help but waver. As the news spread, first and second-rate powers did not even have to mention what they thought. The remaining 3 sacred grounds all felt complex emotions. Turbid Wave Pavilion had always been working hard to make preparations, but sadly had never been able to successfully forge their own sacred artifact. Infinite Boundless Mountain could not help but feel greatly emotional at having regained the heaven-cleaving axe. Thinking of the numerous trials and tribulations they had gone through in forging the sacred artifact, the Jade Sea Pill Heart Sword that year, everyone felt rather conflicted. This was especially so when the Jade Sea City martial practitioners thought about how Yen Zhaoge had also contributed to the forging of the Jade Sea Pill Heart Sword back then. Their emotions were even more complex. The Northern Ocean clone kept the fish dragon spear. Yen Zhaoge's thoughts were linked to his. As he touched the fish dragon spear, it was as though he had an extension of his bloodline, the spear becoming a part of his body as he could wield it freely as though it was his own arm. Yen Zhaoge counted the days. It had already been close to a year since the seal of the East Sea had been established. Normally speaking, the seal would require around 3 years before it could be completely stabilized. However, to Yen Zhaoge, the time was already ripe. After greeting the clan, Yen Zhaoge headed to the outer East Sea with the Northern Ocean clone. Along the way, Yen Zhaoge was concealed above the clouds, others hard-pressed to discover his tracks. However, along the way, Yen Zhaoge could sometimes hear the discussions of other martial practitioners. At this point in time, the 8 Extremities world had already gradually come to terms with the drastic changes in the global situation, accepting Broad Creed Mountain's powerful position. The solitary martial practitioners who were active in the outer East Sea could be said to be the most lawless bunch of people, arrogant and unyielding, licking blood from the tip of their blades. Even towards the descendants of the various sacred grounds, they didn't really care about their enemies' backgrounds. If they caused trouble, they would hide in the outer East Sea, or even the infinite ocean. Now, however, even these vicious people, while they were still the same as before those of Turbid Wave Pavilion, Jade Sea City, and Infinite Boundless Mountain, would generally restrain themselves greatly when meeting descendants of Broad Creed Mountain, avoiding them as much as they could. Yen Zhaoge headed east, arriving at the outer East Sea. From far away, he saw a mountain peak that flickered with white light descending into the great sea, its peak rising high above the sea's surface. In the air above the mountain peak was a vast, boundless sigil that flickered with a gentle radiance. As compared to when the seal had just been established, the mountain peak and the sigil had both shrunk considerably, but the power within was more condensed. With just a thought from Yen Zhaoga, the Northern Ocean clone strode out, suddenly arriving before the mountain peak. To be continued. Chapter 598. The Northern Ocean clone came close to the mountain peak, pressing down on the mountain rock with his palm. The layers of white light surrounding the mountain peak instantly rippled like water, numerous ripples appearing one after another. Yen Zhaoga extended his left hand, writing numerous spirit talismans in midair, which condensed and did not dissipate. When the numerous spirit talismans had come together to form a complex, profound spirit pattern, Yen Zhaoga clenched his right fist and punched outwards. Stimulated by his fist intent, this spirit pattern was imprinted on the mountain peak that flickered with white light before him. The Northern Ocean clone did not cease in his actions as he bolstered it with his true essence. The mountain peak began gradually shrinking while the massive sigil that enveloped it rotated at a faster rate. The concept of the Tai Imperial Braking Formation changed unceasingly, sometimes active, and sometimes still, sometimes fast, and sometimes slow as the surrounding space and time began changing unceasingly. Within the seal, a powerful force seemed to awaken as it began to move. A brutal will seemed about to shoot out from within as a roar even vaguely resounded by the ears of Yen Zhaoga and the Northern Ocean clone. However, accompanied by the unceasing circulation of the seal, that roaring will began to slowly weaken. While it struggled unceasingly, its aura declined unceasingly until it finally vanished. The mountain peak grew smaller and smaller, while the spirit pattern above it instead began to gradually expand. Afterwards, it somewhat resembled the Tai Imperial Braking Formation as it gradually became complete. Looking within the formation, Yen Zhaoga saw that amidst the layers of white light, four figures could vaguely be seen in 4 different directions. The Tai Imperial Braking Formation expanded once more, streams of white light enveloping the surrounding heavens and earth as a world of white light was manifested, isolating it from the outside world. Within the world of white light, that mountain peak gradually vanished, only a sigil remaining which distorted unceasingly. There was a tiny black dot at the center of the sigil. While it looked tiny, it emanated an extremely heavy feeling resembling a black hole. Yen Zhaoga's expression did not change as he glanced at the Northern Ocean clone. The Northern Ocean clone's figure sank, the fish dragon spear that was half black and half gold appearing within his hands. As the Northern Ocean clone stabbed out with his spear, a jet black dot similarly appeared at the tip of the spear, seemingly sweeping all the surrounding light within as it was heavy to the extreme. As the 2 miniature black holes met, the surrounding space instantly distorted even more, even vaguely feeling of being ripped apart could be felt from its edges. The black hole at the center of the Tai Imperial Braking Formation emanated a blazing hot aura of destruction as that terrifying roar resounded once more, seemingly making its final struggle. However, streams of white light descended, suppressing it once more. Yet, as streams of white light descended, it was suppressed once more. The little black dot in the center of the Tai Imperial Braking Array had completely disappeared, leaving behind only a seal. The seal sank to the bottom of the sea, emitting a faint radiance as it stood in the depths of the sea. The Northern Ocean clone retracted his spear with his right hand, his left palm descending. The undercurrents surged beneath the surface of the sea, the tides converging as they gradually formed a barrier, keeping that sigil within. Now, the white light of the Tai Imperial Tai, had gradually dimmed as the Imperial Tai, the ocean to the formation, and the yang. The formation was after the white light, after the white light, the figures appeared as mountain, yen, mountain. The Sacred Sun clan would definitely hope that the East Sea could remain as it was before they had a solution. The painting's Saint Old Man, M.O., who did not participate in the internal struggles of the human race, could be temporarily ignored. Of the other three, Guanglia was alone. Yen Di and Song Wuliang were both trapped here. With the three of them remaining here, the situation in the outside world would definitely be more beneficial to the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall. Could it be that they guided the radiant light sect of the world beyond worlds to descend into the Eight Extremities world? If it was the doing of the Sacred Sun clan, this was the only possibility that Huang Guanglia could think of. Huang Guanglia's heart was filled with complex emotions at this possibility. He did not wish to see this happen. Still, the pressure that Yen Di and Broad Creed Mountain brought to him left him silent. However, as the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation slowly dissipated, the one who appeared before Huang Guanglia was not someone of the Sacred Sun clan. Instead, it was a youth who had left a deep impression on him. Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoga. Seeing Yen Zhaoga, Huang Guanglia's heart instantly sunk. Meanwhile, looking at Yen Zhaoga, Yen Di smiled. A smile also appeared on Yen Zhaoga's face. I've waited for a long time. Fortunately, it is still not too late. Yen Di did not speak. On his forehead, there was a white, rhombus-shaped rune that was currently rotating unceasingly. That was him, as the leader of the formation. After the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation had been unraveled, he was still carefully comprehending the concept of the formation as well as the changes in the surrounding spiritual chi of the heavens and the earth. Seeing this scene, Old Man Mo nodded slowly. His comprehension abilities are really high, gaining enlightenment from all things. He is indeed a heaven-defying genius. A slightly envious look surfaced within Song Wuliang's gaze as well. Watching this scene from the side, Huang Guanglia felt rather awkward. He was silent for a moment before his figure flickered, wanting to leave first. However, a streak of light flickered before his eyes as Yen Zhaoga's Northern Ocean clone had already blocked his path. Huang Guanglia had already noticed the existence of the Northern Ocean clone earlier. Now that the other party was truly blocking his path, Huang Guanglia's originally gloomy face turned even darker than the bottom of a pot. Looking at Huang Guanglia, Yen Zhaoga said calmly, "Where is the east-coming martial saint in a hurry to go? If it is the world-illuminating peak, there is no need for that, because that place is already a wasteland." Huang Guanglia's gaze hardened. Impossible! The old man's entire body flickered with golden light, resembling the rising sun as it illuminated the surrounding area as bright as day. He glanced coldly at Yen Zhaoga, his gaze finally coming to rest on the Northern Ocean clone. "Who are you?" The Northern Ocean clone smiled. "Nothing is impossible." Noticing the Northern Ocean clone's expression and tone, Huang Guanglia was taken aback, carefully appraising Yen Zhaoga and the Northern Ocean clone again. Even he who was used to seeing storms was stunned on the spot at this moment. "This is your clone? You actually managed to refine a clone of the second level of the Martial Saint realm?" Hearing this, Old Man Mo and Song Wuliang were rendered wide-eyed and tongue-tied as well. Even Yen Di felt taken aback, as well as he appraised Yen Zhaoga and the Northern Ocean clone, a look of approval appearing on his face after a while. Huang Guanglia composed himself, looking first at the Northern Ocean clone, and then at the fish-dragon spear in the Northern Ocean clone's hands, saying in a heavy tone, "Even so, This old man believes that you can destroy the heavenly thunder hall. But it is definitely impossible for you to destroy my world-illuminating peak. Yen Zhaoga shrugged. You are thinking that even if your Sacred Sun clan is unable to stop me, you would still be able to guide those of the Radiant Light sect down from the world beyond worlds, right? Huang Guanglia's pupils dilated abruptly, his heart directly sinking to the very bottom. In the Seal of the East Sea a year ago, they had clashed, Yen Zhaoga, and the others had already known that they were connected to the world beyond worlds. However, Yen Zhaoga having been able to call out the Radiant Light sect's name, Huang Guanglia's heart had turned heavy. Having had dealings with the Radiant Light sect before, it was Yen Zhaoga who was standing here now. Didn't that mean, but how was this possible? Huang Guanglia's gaze was rather dazed as tempestuous tides surged within his heart, causing him to feel suffocated as he saw stars before his eyes and vision to darken. To be continued. Chapter 599. Looking at Huang Guanglia, Yen Zhaoga's expression was calm, but his gaze revealed unconcealed killing intent. Huang Guanglia, a year ago, right here in this very place, I once said that this matter is not over. When I am free, I will properly settle things with your Sacred Sun clan. If not for Yen Zhaoga, and Yen Di having long since been prepared, they would have been viciously screwed over by the Sacred Sun clan when the Seal of the East Sea had just been established, stabbing a knife in the back and attacking Feng Yunsheng, Fu Enshu, and the others, as well as those of infinite boundless mountain for the heaven-cleaving axe was one thing. On the other hand, Huang Guanglia had borrowed the power of the world beyond worlds with the help of the blood-drawing, heavenly light golden lamp, nearly escaping from the Seal of the East Sea. If he had succeeded, the consequences for Broad Creed Mountain would have been inconceivable. Yen Di, Old Man Mo, and Song Wuliang would still have been trapped within the Seal of the East Sea, while Huang Guanglia would have been able to escape. Under such circumstances, the Sacred Sun clan would have possessed the strength to sweep through all beneath the heavens without the Radiant Light sect having to descend. Now that the Sacred Sun clan has already been destroyed, it should be your turn now. Yen Zhaoga said slowly, Huang Su and Huang Jia are already dead. I sent them down. Now it's your turn. Huang Guanglia could only feel his temples throbbing. He raised his fist, punching towards Yen Zhaoga. The blazing sun blazed fiercely. The heavens and the earth were instantly engulfed by the golden sunlight. However, the Northern Ocean clone stood between Yen Zhaoga and Huang Guanglia, neither panicked nor flustered as he swept the shaft of the fish dragon spear horizontally, sealing Huang Guanglia's iron fist. Huang Guanglia calmed somewhat, but looking at the Northern Ocean clone before him, a feeling of helplessness surged within his heart. When he had wanted to retreat earlier, the Northern Ocean clone had arrived from behind, directly blocking his path. This had let him know that the person before him was not just a little faster than him. And now that the Northern Ocean clone had unleashed this move, Huang Guanglia was even more certain that he virtually had no chance of dealing with Yen Zhaoga himself. While generally speaking, when two experts clashed, one side would be distracted in protecting others while the other side would hold the initiative and the advantage. The Northern Ocean clone's speed was too fast such that this logic became unrealistic. The stronger the martial practitioner, the more powerful their fighting techniques, their speed would also not be too bad. The Sacred Sun clan even had a top-notch movement technique, like the Great Sun Rising East Traversing Heaven technique. When executed by Huang Guanglia, it was truly like the Great Sun traversing the heavens, sweeping across the universe. However, his opponent was Yen Zhaoga's Northern Ocean clone. At the same cultivation level, the Lord of the Heavenly Thunder Hall Shen Li, who excelled in speed, was not a match for the Northern Ocean clone at all. As a result, Huang Guanglia could only suffer a tragedy. Against such an opponent, he could only fight to the end and decide the victor. It was impossible for him to retreat. However, after just one exchange, Huang Guanglia's heart sank. Not only was the Northern Ocean clone fast, its power was also vast and profound, shocking as even Huang Guanglia, who was tough and fierce with his fists, was secretly left speechless. Moreover, as opposed to the currently unarmed Huang Guanglia, the Northern Ocean clone still possessed the sacred artifact, the fish-dragon spear. Huang Guanglia couldn't run now, and he couldn't beat him even if he fought. The Northern Ocean clone before him was sufficient to surpass everyone here apart from Yan Di. Even Huang Guanglia, who had always had a tough personality, looking at Yan Di, and then Yan Zhaoga now, he too felt short of breath. Back then, he had been in secluded cultivation for several years, having successfully advanced a step further and stepped into the second level of the martial saint realm. How high-spirited had he been! With the sacred artifact, the great sun heaven-measuring ruler in hand, he had been the strongest expert of the 8 extremities world, virtually possessing the momentum to sweep through all beneath the heavens. Who knew that just having emerged from seclusion, Huang Guanglia would be badly battered by Broad Creed Mountain? Yuan Zhengfeng, similarly transcending mortality and entering sainthood aside, Huang Guanglia himself had even lost the great sun heaven-measuring ruler. Just having seen the light of victory, the situation had instantly turned even worse. Afterwards, just around 2 years later, a junior, Yuan Zhengfeng's disciple, Yan Di, had also stepped into the martial saint realm. Yan Di, who had just entered the martial saint realm, was actually already above him. Huang Guanglia could only feel as though the heavens and the earth had changed as he was caught unprepared. He and the Sacred Sun clan virtually had no time to react, as they were instantly pushed to the edge of the cliff. Finally, through the great battle with the Flame Devils and the 9 underworlds, the Sacred Sun clan had managed to gain some time and a chance at victory. However, when Huang Guanglia had extricated himself from the seal, it was another powerful figure who was even younger than Yan Di, Yan Zhaoga. Looking at Yan Zhaoga's Northern Ocean clone and the sacred artifact, the fish-dragon spear, in the Northern Ocean clone's hands, Huang Guanglia sucked in a deep breath, his fists crisscrossing as a powerful, all-conquering force was concentrated within. All the light between the heavens and the earth seemed to be concentrated here, golden and bright as the entire world was transformed into a furnace. He forcibly stabilized his mind now. Yan Zhaoga having learned about the Radiant Light sect, it might also be that his Sacred Sun clan had leaked news of it, or he might have learnt of the name of the Radiant Light sect through some other channel, just like how Broad Creed Mountain also knew of the world beyond worlds. The situation might not be so bad, as this kid before him was likely bluffing. After all, with the strength that Yan Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain had displayed now, it would be impossible for them to stand against the descending experts of the Radiant Light sect, let alone Yan Di having been trapped within the seal of the East Sea. Even if he and Yan Zhaoga were together, as long as the Radiant Light sect sent more than 2 experts of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm, it would be hard for Broad Creed Mountain to stand a chance at victory. This was how Huang Guanglia consoled himself. Watching silently as Huang Guanglia clashed with the Northern Ocean clone, Yan Zhaoga said, "Deng Sun, Radiant Light sect elder, 4th level of the Martial Saint realm. Sun Hao, Radiant Light sect elder, 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm. Lu Feng, Radiant Light sect guest elder, 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm. Yang Zhanhua, Radiant Light sect elder, 2nd level of the Martial Saint realm. Jin Jia, Radiant Light sect guest elder, 2nd level of the Martial Saint realm." Hearing Yan Zhaoga announce these names, Huang Guanglia's heart jolted. Even he had only heard of the names of Deng Sun and Sun Hao before this. Seeing that Yan Zhaoga's expression did not seem to be fake, Huang Guanglia felt his eyelids twitching. Yan Zhaoga smiled, saying, These are the people of the Radiant Light sect who have descended from the world beyond worlds to the eight extremities world this time. Hearing this, Song Wuliang's throat felt a little dry, while Old Man Emo was silent. Looking at Huang Guanglia, Yin Zhaoga continued, "They are already dead, as well. It was me who killed them. You 3 generations of the Huang family shall not be lonely on your journeys." If Song Wuliang had only felt heavy-hearted earlier, he was rather dazed now. Even Old Man Emo was staring wide-eyed at Yin Zhaoga. Beneath their shocked gazes, the Northern Ocean clone pierced through the great sun formed of Huang Guanglia's fist intent with a single spear. Innumerable streaks of golden light transformed into flowing fire, drifting through the air like the afterglow of the setting sun. At the same time, bright red fresh blood splattered into the air. The sharp, tyrannical fish dragon spear penetrated through Huang Guanglia's body. Huang Guanglia's face was filled with despair. He let out a final, enraged roar, grabbing the shaft of the fish dragon spear with one hand while striking towards the Northern Ocean clone with the other. The Northern Ocean clone's expression did not change as he parried Huang Guanglia's attack with a single hand, another vast, vigorous force mightily entering Huang Guanglia's body through the fish dragon spear. To be continued. Chapter 600. The violent force tore apart Huang Guanglia's body. Infinite radiance radiated from Huang Guanglia's body before it was extinguished, resembling the sun losing its light, returning to eternal darkness, also resembling a candle in the wind, finally extinguished. It seemed extremely vast and heroic, yet also insignificant. The east-coming martial saint, who had once reigned supreme over the eight extremities world for many years, the sun-rising east Huang Guanglia, had perished on this east sea today. And the one who had slain him was a young man who was 2 generations younger than him, not yet 30 years of age. Watching this scene from the side, Jade Sea City's city lord Song Wuliang also felt a sense of loss amidst his joy. His Jade Sea City had always been mortal enemies with the Sacred Sun clan. Some years ago, the relationship between the two sides had been even worse than that between Broad Creed Mountain and the Sacred Sun clan, truly being irreconcilable. Having fought together for so many years with some victories and some losses, Jade Sea City had been at a disadvantage overall. However, Song Wuliang and all of Jade Sea City had been rather unyielding. Whether or not the Sacred Sun clan was powerful, they had always been determined to fight it to the end. In this process, Jade Sea City had also accomplished many impressive feats that were praised by the Eight Extremities world. Song Wuliang was of the same generation as Yen Di, Fang Juan, Huang Su, and Lin Tianfeng. While he was older and had started cultivating earlier, he was still the first of his generation to transcend mortality and enter sainthood, achieving the martial saint realm. Jade Sea City's disciple Chinsutting had been the Sacred Sun clan's greatest stumbling block in obtaining the Extreme Yin crown in their early years, even having pulled a tooth out of a tiger's mouth, winning the second Extreme Yin bout, and bringing the Extreme Yin crown back to the water domain. The Heavenly Thunder Hall, Turbid Wave Pavilion, and Jade Sea City had all been competing to forge a sacred artifact that belonged to their sacred grounds. In the end, it had also been Jade Sea City who had been the first to successfully take this step, forging the Jade Sea Pill Heartsword. If not for the invasion of the Flame Devils, this would have caused the alliance of the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall to face danger even earlier, including their city lord Song Wuliang. They would have been competing against the Sacred Sun clan, unceasingly breaking through their limits and climbing upwards. However, at this moment, he suddenly learnt that the Sacred Sun clan had already been destroyed, and that the Sacred Sun clan's final peak expert, their opponent who had always been a great foe to him, Huang Guanglia, had died right before his eyes, dying without any suspense at all. As a martial saint expert, like Song Wuliang, he was unable to recover for a time. The goal, that he had been fighting for all this time had suddenly disappeared before he could truly achieve it. It was as if everything that had happened before was just a dream. Now that the bubble had burst, it was like waking up from a dream. From a certain perspective, the blow to Song Wuliang and the martial practitioners of Jade Sea City was actually not much inferior to that of the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall having been exterminated. And the instigator of all this was standing right in front of Song Wuliang. Looking at Yan Zhaoga's overly young yet calm face, Song Wuliang's mind wavered slightly. After confirming Huang Guanglia's death and confirming that there was no need to worry about the seal of the East Sea down below, Song Wuliang greeted Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di before taking his leave. He needed to return to his Jade Sea City and meet with the longtime elders of his clan, properly considering where he should go in the Eight Extremities world in the days to come. Their former allies were no longer allies. While he wanted to compete with them, he could only feel powerless. There didn't seem to be many choices left. However, Song Wuliang would have to think carefully about how he should go about it. Yan Zhaoga and the others also generally knew that Song Wuliang's mind was probably in a mess right now. They naturally didn't urge him to stay. Moreover, Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di were also overjoyed at their reunion. This was especially so when Yan Zhaoga had used the lofty prestige mirror to open up a temporary dimensional passageway and hide within in order to avoid being affected by the power of the seal. While Yan Di had seen this, he didn't know what the final outcome had been. He didn't know if Yan Zhaoga had been able to safely avoid being harmed by the power of the seal, didn't know if Yan Zhaoga had been safe and sound in other worlds if he had been able to successfully hide there, didn't know when he would be able to return to the Eight Extremities world. All these caused Yan Di to be incomparably worried. It was just that now, seeing Yan Zhaoga having returned safely, his strength having also improved greatly, Yan Di wouldn't voice out his previous worries. He just heaved a sigh of relief, looking happily at his son. It's good that you're safe and sound. Yan Zhaoga, on the other hand, was unlike his usual self as he became long-winded, virtually narrating everything that had happened to him in the vast ocean world, as well as his experiences after returning there in great detail. Yan Di didn't have to open his mouth to ask about the many questions on his mind, as Yan Zhaoga narrated them all in great detail. Along the way, there were even many times where Yan Di had asked for praise, causing the Yan Di who had set his heart at ease to instead pour cold water on him. His son being sufficiently outstanding, Yan Di was overjoyed to the extreme. Yet he instead didn't praise him, instead finding fault with him, only hoping that his son could be even more outstanding. Hearing that Fu Enshu was similarly safe and sound, and that Yan Zhaoga had even found Su Fei and Shijun, Yan Di felt even more at ease. Yan Di was not concerned about the possible future troubles that the Radiant Light sect might bring. We'll deal with them when they come. We'll make our own preparations. If they come again, we'll just have to fight them. Yan Zhaoga smiled. Precisely so. Swiveling his head to the side, he saw old man Emo standing quietly amid space, not having left. Seeing Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di reunited and reminiscing about their parting, old man Emo smiled. If you are free, why don't you come to this old man's Verdant Pill Island? Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di exchanged glances, both able to tell that there was more to old man Mo's words. Old man Emo had always been free and unfettered, never getting involved in the internal struggles of the Eight Extremities world's human martial practitioners. While Broad Creed Mountain currently suppressed the Eight Extremities world and appeared to be the hegemon of the Eight Extremities world, old man Emo didn't necessarily have to ride on their coattails. Meanwhile, Yan Zhaoga and Yan Di similarly didn't have any thoughts of conquering Verdant Pill Island at the moment. Old man Emo issuing an unprecedentedly warm invitation now caused Yan Zhaoga to immediately feel that there was something more to it. In order to support your fellow humans of the Eight Extremities world, your clan has always spared no effort in battling the flame devils and the 9 underworlds, not fearing sacrifice. This has always been the same, ever since the era of Jean Han. This old man has always admired it. Old man Mo seemed to know the doubts within the hearts of Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di as he smiled. This old man heard little friend Yen mention just now that the Sacred Sun Clan's backer in the world beyond worlds is the Radiant Light Sect, and the experts of the Radiant Light Sect who descended to the 8 extremities world this time were all slain by little friend Yen. Yen Zhaoga smiled. I have let you see a joke. Old man Mo shook his head. This old man is not doubting little friend Yan's words. In truth, I am grateful. Yen Zhaoga's gaze flickered as he thought of a possibility, focusing his gaze on old man Mo. Could it be that you, old man Mo, smiled and nodded, saying slowly, this old man also hails from the world beyond worlds. Still, after so many years, I feel more that I am of the 8 extremities world. The old man sighed, lightly. The reason this old man went into hiding was actually more to avoid trouble. Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di realized because of the Radiant Light Sect. Old man Mo said, that's right. He looked at the two. Your future prospects are limitless. The 8 extremities world is just your starting point. I believe that you will definitely go to the world beyond worlds in the future. And now that you have come into conflict with the Radiant Light Sect, this old man has some words here, some things that might be of some help. Chapter 601. Old Man Mo's origins were extremely mysterious. All these years, no one in the 8 extremities world had known of his true origins. However, not only was he the oldest martial saint of the current 8 extremities world, his supreme martial arts were also one of the top legacies of the 8 extremities world. Compared to the various legacies of the 6 sacred lands, the martial arts of Old Man Mo's lineage were in no way inferior. What the martial practitioners of the 8 extremities world took even more delight in discussing was the fact that Old Man Mo, who had always lived in seclusion and rarely clashed with others, no one knew if all that he had previously displayed was all that he had. Even Yen Zhaoga was more or less able to distinguish the various martial arts that Old Man Mo was proficient in. However, having had very little contact with him, he was also hard-pressed to see through the other party's foundations. He had not thought that Old Man Mo would take the initiative to reveal his identity today, causing Yen Zhaoga to feel slightly surprised. Still, thinking carefully about Old Man Mo's earlier actions, including how while Old Man Mo had been surprised that the Sacred Sun Clan was connected to the world beyond worlds a year ago, he had seemed to know of its existence. Yen Zhaoga looked at Old Man Mo. Perhaps it was because he had slain someone of the Radiant Light Sect that Old Man Mo viewed him in a different light, or perhaps Old Man Mo had some other thoughts in mind. Anyway, this old senior had revealed his true abilities today, even taking the initiative to do so. Do you plan on returning now? Yen Zhaoga asked. Old Man Mo shook his head. The treasure that assisted this old man in traversing the wound of the sky has long since been used up. If this old man does not cultivate to the 3rd level of the martial saint realm or above, I will not be able to return to the world beyond worlds. He paused for a moment before continuing. Also, this old man has no intention of returning to the world beyond worlds now. From the looks of it, the Radiant Light Sect is still powerful. This old man does not wish to rely on the protection of other powers. Being able to avoid them and live in this world, this old man is very satisfied. Saying thus, Old Man Mo made a please gesture towards Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di, inviting them to sit at Verdant Pill Island. Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di both agreed. After contacting someone of the clan to send the news back, the two then headed together with Old Man Mo to Verdant Pill Island, where he resided. When they arrived at Verdant Pill Island, Old Man Mo's disciples naturally came to greet them. Towards Old Man Mo's return, his disciples were also rather happy. These people also reported everything they had seen and heard to Old Man Mo, hearing that the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall had indeed been destroyed, and that a great battle that shocked the heavens had once erupted at the foot of Broad Creed Mountain. Old Man Mo knew that Yen Zhaoga's words were not false. As they sat down, Old Man Mo pondered for a moment before asking, "How much does your sect know about the world beyond worlds and the Radiant Light sect?" Yen Zhaoga said, "The Eight Extremities world is not the only heavens and earth in this world. While I do not know how many heavens and earth like the Eight Extremities world there are, it should not be a small number. Meanwhile, the world beyond worlds seems to be of a higher level. The feeling it gives off is somewhat similar to the relationship between the world before the Great Calamity and the heavenly court above the nine heavens. Perhaps the difference isn't that great, but it's still similar." Hearing his words, Old Man Mo nodded. "It is indeed similar. The spiritual chi in the world beyond worlds is abundant, far surpassing that of the Eight Extremities world. It would be easier for martial practitioners to cultivate by breathing and nourishing their chi there. Still, it cannot be said that the world beyond worlds completely surpasses the Eight Extremities world. While people of the Eight Extremities world generally have to surpass the third level of the martial saint realm before they can ascend to the world beyond worlds, the world beyond worlds does not just have martial practitioners above the third level of the martial saint realm. Amongst those who were originally born in the world beyond worlds, there are martial grandmasters, martial scholars, and even body refinement martial practitioners, their numbers extremely great, as it is unknown how many there are. This old man was born in the world beyond worlds. Afterwards, in order to avoid calamity, I coincidentally descended to the Eight Extremities world. There is naturally not just a single heavens and earth like the Eight Extremities world." Old Man Mo smiled. From what this old man knows, there are thousands of such worlds. Yen Zhaoga and Yendi's expressions did not change as they nodded slightly. Old Man Mo continued, "In terms of geographical area, the world beyond worlds is who knows how many times larger than the Eight Extremities world. The place where this old man lived that year was known as the Royal Reed Sea, which was already much larger than the Eight Extremities world." Yen Zhaoga and Yendi exchanged glances. The name of the Royal Reed Sea easily made them think of one of the 36 heavens of Taoism scriptures, the Zhuluo Royal Reed Heaven. Yen Zhaoga could not help but smile. "I wonder if there are Tangyao Mountain and Duan Jinggu?" Old Man Mo smiled as well. "I have never heard of them." The name of the Royal Reed Sea must have been given to the Zhuluo Royal Reed Heaven by those of post-Great Calamity times. After laughing, Old Man Mo asked, "I wonder how much do you and your father know about the Radiant Light sect?" Yen Zhaoga said slowly, "Is it related to the dim, radiant sect of the past? I know that in the world beyond worlds, other than the Radiant Light sect, there is also the dim darkness sect." Old Man Mo rubbed his palms together in admiration. "That's right. It is precisely so. Once, under the leadership of their chief, the dim radiant emperor Yin Tianxia, the dim radiant sect flourished for a time, possessing great power. However, following the death of their chief, the dim radiant sect declined as well, internal strife occurring within the sect, finally causing this massive entity to split apart, forming the Radiant Light sect and the Dim Darkness sect, which have always been embroiled in conflict." Hearing Old Man Mo's narration, Yen Zhaoga's gaze flickered. "Please wait a moment. I heard you mention the dim, radiant emperor Yin Tianxia just now." Old Man Mo nodded. Yen Zhaoga saying, "The dim radiant sect existed before the Great Calamity. Reading through ancient texts, I have some understanding that before the Great Calamity, the dim radiant sect should not have produced a figure who could claim the title of emperor." "That's right. Yin Tianxia was a figure who only appeared after the Great Calamity," surpassing his predecessors and opening up a new era for the future. Old Man Mo answered. According to what this old man knows, it was not that he claimed the title of emperor in vain, becoming a laughingstock for others. Instead, with his strength, he was indeed able to claim the title of emperor. It is just a pity that such a figure declined after flourishing, resembling a shooting star. This old man has no intention of offending you. It is just that in the eight extremities world, looking at the exalted heaven shaker of your sect, that year, this old man often thought of the dim, radiant emperor. Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di did not feel offended as they both nodded. Since that is so, this chief Yin is indeed a rare figure. Old Man Mo clapped lightly. A pillar of light rising from within the great hall where the three were, streams of light lingering by the side. Inside the beam of light, there was something that looked like a metal fragment floating quietly. The metal shards were half black and half white. They were one and the same, illustrating the changes between light and darkness. Yen Zhaoga looked at Old Man Mo, who sighed. It was precisely because of this that this old man's family met with disaster that year, virtually all of our clansmen dying tragically. This old man has studied it for many years, yet is still unable to grasp the gist of it. I only know that this item seems to be related to Yin Tianxia that year, which is why the Radiant Light sect values it so much. This old man wishes to get rid of this source of trouble. However, when I think of the enmity of the annihilation of my race, I just don't want to let the Radiant Light sect benefit so easily. Old Man Mo did not have the thought of diverting the trouble to someone else. He had also killed more than a single Radiant Light sect disciple that year. If Broad Creed Mountain was exterminated by the Radiant Light sect, and he was found by them, it would not end well for him either. Yen Di asked, why did Senior not seek out the Dim Darkness sect? Old Man Mo smiled bitterly. It was already a blessing from the heavens that I was able to escape with my life from the heavy encirclement. Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di both nodded slightly. Old Man Mo looked sincerely at Yen Zhaoga. This thing might be of great use, but it might also be disadvantageous to you and your father. Looking at that metallic fragment, Yen Zhaoga pondered. To be continued. Chapter 602. While it was a relic of the dim, radiant Emperor Yin Tianxia, the dim, radiant sect had been divided for so many years, the Radiant Light sect and the Dim Darkness sect having been fighting for so many years as well. It was impossible that the other party would willingly submit to a single relic they had obtained. If the two sides had reached an agreement beforehand, then it would be a different story. However, this possibility was not high. However, this thing in front of him could still be of considerable value. Perhaps there was some secret hidden within it. At the end of the day, Yin Tianxia was an expert who had surpassed the previous generations of the Dim Radiant sect, a hegemon of his generation who had brought the Dim Radiant sect to the peak it had once attained in pre-Great Calamity times. The Tao tradition of the Dim Radiant sect had definitely been greatly affected by the Great Calamity as well. It was just that they had been more fortunate than the other sects in that their lineage had not been severed. Even Yen Zhaoga felt rather commendable towards the person who had been able to lead the Dim Radiant sect out of its depths under such circumstances, rising to unprecedented heights. Taking a step back, even if the Dim Radiant sect had not suffered any losses at all in the Great Calamity, it would still not be easy for them to surpass their predecessors. The fact that the Radiant Light sect had killed people for their possessions and made things difficult for Old Man Mo's clan also reflected that this metallic fragment was not simple. Yen Zhaoga pondered for a moment before swiveling his head to look at his father. Then he saw Yen Di looking over at him as well, nodding slowly. Yen Di was of the same mind as Yen Zhaoga. Their Broad Creed Mountain and the Radiant Light sect were already irreconcilable enemies. They would naturally not be afraid of fighting over one more thing. Increasing his own chips and defeating the other party was what he needed to consider. The only problem was that the dim darkness sect might also covet this treasure. Still, as Old Man Emo had said, while the treasure might bring about adverse effects, it might also be of great use. Yen Di said, "You are proficient in all sorts of miscellaneous knowledge. You can keep this for now and carefully analyze it." Yen Zhaoga nodded in agreement, cupping his hands towards Old Man Emo. "Since that is so, I thank Senior." Old Man Emo shook his head. "What are you saying? This old man should be the one thanking you, thanking your esteemed sect for defeating the Radiant Light sect, allowing this old man's resentment to be alleviated. Speaking of which, this old man has already lost his sharpness, only daring to hide in a corner. I no longer have the confidence to face the Radiant Light sect head-on and exact my revenge. Looking at you, father and son, this old man feels ashamed. I feel ashamed to face my dead clansmen." Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di consoled Old Man Emo a little, and Old Man Mo's heart also very quickly calmed down. The two chatted for a while longer, mainly listening to Old Man Emo talk about the local customs and practices of the world beyond worlds. In the end, Old Man Emo sighed and said, "After all, this old man has already left that place for over 100 years. It is hard to predict whether there will be any major changes now. I hope that this will not mislead you and your father." Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di both said, "You are polite. We should be the ones thanking you." After taking their leave of Old Man Emo, Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di left Verdant Pill Island, finally embarking on the journey back to Broad Creed Mountain. Passing through the Earth domain, thinking of the many experts of Broad Creed Mountain who had died in battle here, thinking of Yuan Zhengfeng, who had been lost amidst the chaotic flows of space, Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di both felt rather heavy. Hearing Yen Zhaoga's detailed narration of what had happened that day, a cold light flickered within Yen Di's eyes from time to time. Thinking of how Shun Li had already died at Yen Zhaoga's hands, Yen Di's gaze gradually turned gentle as he looked at his son, his expression filled with praise. After a long time, he sighed softly. "I hope Master is blessed by the heavens." Yen Zhaoga nodded silently as well. Yen Di asked, "Is there a way to find Master like how you found Su Fei and Shijun?" "The chances are slim." Yen Zhaoga let out a rare bitter laugh. Without any clues at all, the chances of Grand Master finding his way back might not be as high as Grand Master finding his way back himself. Yen Di thought about it. If that is the case, either Master returns on his own or the possibility of all of us meeting up in the world beyond worlds in the future is greater. Yen Zhaoga said, "While that is true, I will not give up. As long as there is a sliver of hope, I will still persevere." Yen Di nodded slowly, not speaking for a long time as he looked at the vast territory of the Earth domain beneath his feet. His master, Yuan Zhengfeng, could be said to be one of the people who had influenced him the most. Sometimes the word "one of" could even be removed. Like Shirtai, Fu Enshu, and the others, Yen Di had entered the clan at a young age, with Yuan Zhengfeng being both a master and a father. After a while, Yen Di retracted his gaze, striding off once more as he asked, "That sacred artifact, the fish dragon spear, was forged by you?" Yen Zhaoga nodded in agreement, smiling as he said, "Having gained much from entering the dragon tomb, I have more than enough to forge another sacred artifact. Still, it would be best if you did it yourself. That way, you would be able to infuse your martial true intent within, making it easier for you." Yen Di nodded. "That is only natural." Yen Zhaoga continued, "In the dragon tomb, this time, I also obtained something that can assist us in heading to the world beyond worlds even before our cultivation bases have reached the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm." He handed the paper fan that he had obtained from the Dim Darkness sect martial practitioners to Yen Di. Stroking the handle of the fan, Yen Di was slightly lost in thought. Hearing Yen Zhaoga's idea of heading to the world beyond worlds in advance to make arrangements, Yen Di was not surprised. Both father and son were tough people who liked to take the initiative. Yen Zhaoga's idea was exactly what he wanted. "Are you able to wield that extreme young seal again now?" Yen Di asked, after pondering for a moment. Yen Zhaoga spread his palms apart. "I still can't for now. This lord is very hard to serve. Unlike the extreme Yin crown, when wielded by a maiden of extreme Yin, the power of the extreme Yin crown increases progressively, gradually increasing along with the cultivation base of the maiden of extreme Yin. However, the power of this extreme Yang seal is extremely violent as soon as it is used, just happening to be at the final limit that the 8 extremities world can bear. It cannot be lowered even if you want to. The final result is that after a single use, it will fall into slumber once more, unable to awaken for a long time." Yen Di pondered as he said, "It has already been more than half a year since you last used it. With such a long gap, it would be very easy for others to make use of it. If the radiant light sect descends once more, the extreme young seal might not be able to make it in time. Even if it does make it in time and falls into slumber once more, their third descent might also be stuck during the period of slumber of the extreme Yang seal." Yen Di shook his head. "After the battle of the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation and the oceanic amount of true dragon chi that you spoke of, I am confident that I will be able to improve further within a short period of time. It is just that the matter of heading to the world beyond worlds will have to fall on your shoulders. I will have to remain in the 8 extremities world and stabilize the situation, preventing them from descending to cause trouble for us once more. Fortunately, you are no longer the same as you were in the past. Not only has your cultivation base soared by leaps and bounds, you have also refined a martial saint clone. As long as you are vigilant, most people will not be able to do anything to you." Yen Di felt rather regretful. How much he wished to head to the world beyond worlds was not just because there were vaster heavens and earth there, greater opportunities and challenges. The true reason was that the person he had always hoped to meet again might just be there. Still, as a person, he had to bear his responsibilities. Yen Di could only suppress his emotions. Yen Zhaoga sighed, slightly as well, knowing that his father's decision was actually the most suitable one. The father and son proceeded onwards, Broad Creed Mountain soon appearing before their eyes once more. Looking at Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoga blinked. "Oh, there is still something that I have to tell you." Yen Di glanced rather strangely at Yen Zhaoga. "What is it?" Yen Zhaoga chuckled. "I have taken a fancy to someone else's daughter." Chapter 603. Liking someone else's girl? Hearing Yen Zhaoga's words, Yen Di was momentarily taken aback before he appraised his son. "Who is it?" Yen Zhaoga smiled. "You also know her, senior apprentice Aunt Fu's disciple, junior apprentice Sister Feng, Yunsheng." Yen Di could not help but laugh. As the chief, he knew all the core, true disciples of Broad Creed Mountain like the back of his hand, let alone when he had been the first seat elder of the Martial Inheritance Hall. Feng Yunsheng was a maiden of extreme Yin, her situation even more unique. Yen Di naturally couldn't be any more familiar with her. Right, she's not a bad girl, her character and temperament both top-notch, also possessing both looks and talent. Yen Di nodded, but then changed the topic. "Still, while you like her, does junior apprentice niece Feng like you?" Yen Zhaoga stared wide-eyed. "What a joke, father. If your son, were to shout about finding a wife in the 8 extremities world, now, the number of fangirls wanting to give birth to a monkey would be able to line up from the great western desert all the way to the East Sea, then circle back to the great western desert." "What are you saying? You're such a good person. Give birth to a monkey for me to see?" Yen Di glared. Yen Zhaoga chuckled. also realizing that he had been a little careless with his words earlier. Still, while he was laughing in a mocking manner, that smug look on his face could not be concealed. Yen Di felt exasperated, whilst also amused as he shook his head repeatedly. "You are looking at Yen Zhaoga," he said. "Speak properly. What exactly is going on?" Yen Zhaoga retracted his smile, saying very earnestly, "I am not being impulsive or lusting after women. Before returning from the vast ocean world, I had already thought things through very clearly." He pulled back the corners of his lips. "While the two of us have never communicated before, in the vast ocean world, when I confirmed my thoughts, I vaguely had a feeling that longing that traversed through space and time seemed to have a destination, not being empty. Before this, I had always been worried about the safety of Yunsheng and the others after they had been ambushed. Still, at that moment, while I was still very worried, I seemed to have a destination. This feeling is so mysterious that even I can't tell if it's real or not. I often wonder if it's the effect of self-suggestion." At this point, Yen Zhaoga smiled again. "However, when I returned here and finally saw Yunqing again, just looking at her gaze, I knew that my feeling was right. And she can also understand me." Yen Di listened quietly, his usually sharp, domineering gaze appearing exceptionally gentle at this moment. He looked at Yen Zhaoga for a while before smiling. "Then you can't get past senior apprentice Sister Fu now? Let me say this first. I can't do anything about this. If I go and tell you, it will only produce the opposite of the desired result. However, I don't think Senior Sister Fu will make things difficult for you on this matter. She herself hated the elders of the sect, worrying about her marriage." Hearing his words, Yen Zhaoga instantly became smug again. "Relax, father. I've long since taken care of Senior Apprentice Aunt Fu." Yen Di nodded, looking at Yen Zhaoga for a while before he suddenly said slowly, "Right, but there is someone that you have yet to deal with." All of Yen Zhaoga's hairs stood on end. His father had always been swift and decisive, extremely domineering. Such a slow and unhurried manner was virtually non-existent. "Yunsheng is an orphan, having no parents." He probed. "It can't be that you don't agree, right?" Yen Di shook his head. "Of course I agree. Junior apprentice niece Feng is very good. I am very happy that the two of you are in love with each other." Yen Zhaoga's heart had just settled back down when he heard Yen Di continue neither hurriedly nor slowly. "However, you still have to ask your mother for her opinion on this matter, don't you?" Yen Zhaoga was dazed for a moment before he immediately smiled bitterly. "Isn't mother not here now?" Yen Di said leisurely. "It's just going on a holiday, not in the Eight Extremities world." "Yes, going on a holiday. That's what I meant." Yen Zhaoga held his forehead. Speaking of which, he had really gotten carried away. Knowing that his mother was not here, he had still shown off his love in front of his father. Wasn't this just looking for trouble for himself? It was just that he had really not thought that his usually domineering father would actually play him like this. Under the heavens, there was probably only him who could see such a Yen Wudi, right? Yen Zhaoga had a pained expression on his face. "While it would be even more shocking and eye-catching for the two of us to ascend to the throne together, you and mother had invited many friends and relatives back then and performed a grand ceremony. It was once a grand occasion, as you were officially married, with no regrets to be made up for. You don't have to accompany me, right?" At the end of the day, it was his skin that was thicker. Yen Di was angered by his lazy look as he raised a hand, wanting to hit him. "This mouth of yours really has no control now." Yen Zhaoga hurriedly said that he dared not. Yen Di retracted his hand. "Anyway, your mother's will is my will. Work hard in the world beyond worlds." "Definitely, definitely." Yen Zhaoga smiled bitterly. "For your happiness, and also for my own happiness." Yen Di nodded, his hands behind his back, as he leisurely walked towards the clan. What he had said earlier had naturally only been a joke, while it had indeed stirred up his longing for his wife. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, who was growing more and more mature as he walked forward step by step, Yan Di felt incomparably comforted as even his footsteps appeared somewhat lighter. Acting out of character was a manifestation of his exceptionally joyful mood in the first place. By the time he had returned to the mountain, Yan Di's expression had long since returned to normal. Still, seeing Feng Yunsheng, his gaze was still warmer than it had been in the past. As the chief of a clan, I want to say that you, junior apprentice niece Feng, possess extremely high talent in the martial Tao as well as an outstanding will. You will definitely achieve great things in the future. Looking at Feng Yunsheng, Yan Di said in a harmonious tone, I believe that with your will, you should not be complacent, also not having the heart to retract your brilliance behind a man. That would be a great pity, even if that person is my son. As a martial practitioner, one should have the will and perseverance to constantly improve. The people and matters around you should allow you to become better and better, not becoming shackles and obstacles. I would not be wrong about such a talent like you. Yan Di smiled. As a father, I am very happy that Zhaoge has found such a good companion. Yan Zhaoge similarly smiled. While he had still been joking with him earlier, now that he had seen Feng Yunsheng, his father had still immediately expressed his stance. In front of others, even when she was standing hand in hand with Yan Zhaoge, Feng Yunsheng was still as carefree as ever. Still, in front of Yan Zhaoge's father, a rare look of shyness appeared on Feng Yunsheng's face as she bowed towards Yan Di. I will solemnly acknowledge Chief's teachings. It was Fu Enshu who stood by the side, who said, I have rarely admired anyone in my life. Still, I have to admit that it would be very difficult not to be overshadowed by Zhaoge's brilliance. Even you, Yan Di, should feel this now. Yan Di smiled. The pupil surpasses the master. This is a good thing. Fu Enshu nodded. These words are true. I also think that Yunsheng's future accomplishments will surpass mine. Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng took their leave together. Looking at Yan Di, Fu Enshu was silent for a moment before she asked, Are you going to the world beyond worlds to search for Xue Chuqing? Yan Di answered calmly, Zhaoge will be going this time. I will remain in the Eight Extremities world to stabilize the situation and prevent the Radiant Light sect from invading again. Fu Enshu nodded silently before turning and leaving the great hall, gazing at the distant sky. Fu Enshu's gaze was distant as she stood there in a daze, not speaking for a long time. To be continued. Chapter 604. After exiting Yan Di's place, Feng Yunsheng instantly let out a long breath, even patting her chest somewhat exaggeratedly. Yan Zhaoge was all smiles as he watched from the side. Noticing his gaze, Feng Yunsheng naturally knew what he meant as she said exasperatedly, You are our chief after all, also the current number 1 expert of the Eight Extremities world. Let alone ordinary people, even other martial saints would not be able to compare to that formless aura of yours. It is very normal for me to be like this. Oh, Yan Zhaoge didn't say anything more. He just looked at her and laughed nonstop. Feng Yunsheng felt helpless. Her shoulders slumped a little. It's mainly because of your father. Yan Zhaoge smiled. An ugly daughter-in-law still has to meet her parents-in-law. Feng Yunsheng chuckled, staring at Yan Zhaoge. I'm very ugly? Yan Zhaoge smacked his lips. Not ugly, of course not ugly. Feng Yunsheng had just nodded satisfactorily when she heard Yan Zhaoge continue. It's just that his face is a little rounder, his ears a little bigger, his eyebrows a little stiffer, his height a little shorter. And, that's right. Feng Yunsheng looked askance at Yan Zhaoge, nodding exasperatedly. She did not have an oval face like Meng Wan and Si Kongqing, but rather had a goose egg face. although it was not a round face, it looked somewhat plump. Feng Yunsheng practiced martial arts all day long, so her body was always well proportioned. However, if an ordinary person were to get fat, the first thing that would happen to them would be their face. Her facial features were soft and beautiful. At first glance, she wasn't as eye-catching as Meng Wan and Si Kongqing, but she belonged to the type that was more enduring the more one looked at her. She had a unique charm. However, compared to other women, her eyebrows were a bit harder and thicker, coupled with her resolute gaze. It caused her entire person to be full of heroic spirit, diluting the gentle beauty of her facial features by a bit. The only blemish was that his ears were a little too big. Feng Yunsheng usually let her hair down and draped over her shoulders and back, intentionally or unintentionally covering her ears. Although she was bright and generous, she also loved beauty. As for her short stature, this was purely Yan Zhaoga's fault. Feng Yunsheng's height was above average amongst females. Still, being under Fu Wenshu's tutelage, she was indeed slightly shorter than Si Kongqing, and Yin Luhua being even shorter than her master Fu Wenshu. Having been picked out by Yan Zhaoga, Feng Yunsheng could not help but roll her eyes. Looking at her smilingly, Yan Zhaoga finally said, "But I just like those with rounder faces, bigger ears, stiffer eyebrows, and slightly shorter stature. A certain someone fits the bill perfectly, not the slightest bit off." Feng Yunsheng imitated him and spread her hands. "This is really fortunate. Otherwise, no one in this world would want me." Smiling, Yan Zhaoga took out a long, thin cloth belt and walked close to Feng Yunsheng. Yen, Feng, 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 Feng. I have my own. As Feng Yunsheng said this, Yan Zhaoga had already tied her hair into a ponytail. Looking at Feng Yunsheng's exposed ears, Yan Zhaoga smiled. "Covering them up is not worth it. You know, with your hair tied behind your head, you look even more beautiful with a childlike face and a youthful appearance. You look like you're 16 or 17. Feng Yunsheng didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. "You mean that I'm already an old lady?" Yan Zhaoga tied up her hair. "I'm just joking with you. Martial practitioners of my generation, having reached a certain cultivation level, are all able to retain their youthful looks, even regaining their youth. Still, believe me, you are indeed better looking like this. Your other advantages are all more evident. As for your ears being exposed, it's actually not that big of a deal." Looking quietly at Yan Zhaoga, Feng Yunsheng tilted her head slightly, her gaze gentle as she smiled after a long time. "All right, I'll listen to you." Hands on his hips, Yan Zhaoga appraised her before finally smiling satisfactorily. Perfect. Senior apprentice brother, Yen?" Now, a somewhat surprised yet somewhat hesitant voice resounded from the side. Swiveling his head, Yan Zhaoga saw a youth standing by the side of the road. "Oh, junior apprentice brother Lan?" While they had not seen each other for quite some time, Yan Zhaoga still recognized the other party with a single glance. It was one of the members of the group he had led to temper in the sealing dragon abyss of the Eastern Tang that year. His name was Lan Wenyan. Back in the Eastern Tang, because he had spoken up for Yan Zhaoga, he had been heavily injured by Yi Jing. Luckily, after returning to the mountain to recuperate, he had finally gradually recovered. Many years had passed since then, and the martial artist of that year had already reached the martial scholar realm. Seeing that Yan Zhaoga recognized him, Lan Wenyan was instantly overjoyed, his fingers involuntarily tightening their grip on his sword. That sword, however, was a mid-grade artifact. Speaking of which, it had also been obtained from Yan Zhaoga. That year, after Lan Wenyan had been injured by Yi Jing, Yan Zhaoga had once sent someone to deliver medicine to him, also saying that a mid-grade artifact would be reserved for him. when he had refined his qi into aura qi and stepped into the martial scholar realm. That would be when that mid-grade artifact would be given to him. Mid-grade artifacts were generally only possessed by outer aura martial scholars. To Yan Zhaoge, it was nothing much, but to Lan Wenyan, who was currently still an inner aura martial scholar, it was indisputably a divine weapon. And in Lan Wenyan's heart, the position of this sword was incomparable to other weapons. After bowing to Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng looking at Yan Zhaoge, Lan Wenyan was taken aback. After all, the current him could not be compared to the past, but the changes in the Yan Zhaoge before him were 100 times, 1,000 times greater. The previous Yan Zhaoge had been an even more outstanding senior apprentice brother of the same generation, a role model. After that, various miraculous performances had allowed Yan Zhaoge to surpass the limits of seniority and age, causing his fellow disciples of the same generation to find it hard to view him as one of their own. Within the clan, Yan Zhaoge's authority had risen unceasingly, even becoming a core member of the decision-making and leadership echelon. And now, with the Sacred Sun clan and the Heavenly Thunder Hall having been destroyed and the Radiant Light sect having suffered a setback, Yan Zhaoge had virtually become a living legend of the Eight Extremities world, causing Lan Wenyan to feel dazzled even as he looked up at him. In a moment of agitation just now, he had opened his mouth to call out to Yan Zhaoge. However, now that he was truly standing before Yan Zhaoge, he could only feel his entire body trembling slightly, his mouth dry as he didn't know what to say. Yan Zhaoge looked at Lan Wenyan's attire, wearing a blue robe over his white clothes. He had already long since been promoted from an ordinary disciple to an elite disciple. Blue robes are not easy to wear, and wanting to add black borders to them requires effort and toil that far surpasses those of the same generation. Looking at Lan Wenyan, Yan Zhaoge also felt a little emotional as he smiled. Just relying on rewards to motivate people is actually not good. Still, I more or less understand your personality. The two of us can also be considered to have some tradition, some fate. How about this? Just like last time, I'll leave a mid-grade spirit artifact here for you. When you step into the martial grandmaster realm, that will be when it will be yours. Watching from the side, Feng Yunsheng smiled, but did not speak. Of course, she knew that a mid-grade spirit artifact was not the main point, and that even Lan Wenyan would not think of it as such. What he could feel now was Yan Zhaoge's expectations and motivation towards him, resembling a gentleman's agreement. Feeling that his body was no longer trembling, Lan Wenyan straightened his back, replying in a sonorous voice, "I will follow senior apprentice brother Yan's teachings. I will definitely work hard." Chapter 605. Feeling excited. Lan Wenyan forcibly suppressed the excitement within his heart, bowing towards Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yunsheng before taking his leave. Looking at his departing figure, Feng Yunsheng asked curiously, "What do you mean by tradition and fate?" Yan Zhaoge roughly explained what had happened back then, smiling at the end. "It was also that time when I went to the Eastern Tang, where I inadvertently ran into Meng Wan, afterwards finding you because of her." Feng Yunsheng clicked her tongue in wonder. Yan Zhaoge said, "This fellow is not bad. The reason why I helped him out a little was not just because of what happened back then. Back then, at the hands of that Yi Jing, he was gravely injured. Although the sect treated him, and I gave him medicine, his injuries still took a long time to recover. In the outside world, he is a rare genius, but in our sect, his talent is not top-notch. With this delay, there is a possibility that he will fade into obscurity. But he painstakingly worked harder than before. Among his peers, he could be considered one of the most hard-working. In the end, he surpassed many people and gradually stood out." Yan Zhaoge smiled. "Since he has some kinship with me and is also willing to improve himself, I will help him out a bit more." Feng Yinsheng also nodded slightly. If that's the case, I believe he won't disappoint you. The two of them talked as they walked on the mountain path. As they walked, Yan Zhaoge gazed into the distance, as he could not help but be amused. I've run into so many familiar faces today. Feng Yinsheng also looked over and saw several figures appearing at the end of the road. There were Feng Moyang, Jun Luo, Zhao Ming, Jing Yunji, and the others. Feng Yinsheng was also very familiar with these people. She also smiled and said, "They are indeed all acquaintances." Seeing Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng, Feng Moyang, and the others all cupped their hands. Yan Zhaoge smiled and asked, "Why have you all come here?" Jun Luo said, smilingly, "Daddy came to Broad Creed Mountain to visit Uncle Yen, so I followed along." Yan Zhaoge came to a realization, swiveling his head to look at Zhao Ming. "Since that's the case, has Uncle Zhao also come?" Zhao Ming nodded. "Yes," Feng Moyang said with a smile. "Uncle Zhao and Uncle Jun have come from afar, so my father stopped refining the pills." Their clans were extremely close. Their fathers, Yan Di, Feng Qi, Jun Ziyuan, and Zhao Shiqing having been close friends in their youth. Yan Di's transcending mortality and entering sainthood was a joyous occasion. Jun Ziyuan and Zhao Shiqing naturally had to come and offer their congratulations. It was just that due to the invasion of the flame devil world of the East Sea previously, Yan Di had immediately rushed to the East Sea as soon as he had emerged from seclusion as a martial saint. Afterwards, he had sealed the flame devils with the Tai Imperial Breaking Formation, remaining within the seal all this time, only having managed to extricate himself recently. Yan Zhaoge smiled. "Let's go. The older generation can gather their things, and we can gather ours." Jun Luo's gaze shifted between Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng. "Brother Yan, senior apprentice sister Feng, is she going to become my little sister-in-law?" Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng could not help but laugh. Yan Zhaoge directly flicked her head. "Get rid of the word little. I'm older than you in the first place." Jun Luo clutched her head. "Senior apprentice sister Feng, if you tie your hair up, you might not even be older than me." Hearing her words, Yan Zhaoge glanced at Feng Yinsheng complacently. Feng Yinsheng smiled, shaking her head. Jun Luo scooted over, giggling, "I'm the first to congratulate you. Shouldn't I get a reward?" "There will naturally be a reward, but I also congratulate you, Luo Luo." Feng Yinsheng smiled as she appraised Jun Luo, as well as the delicate youth standing beside her. Hearing Feng Yinsheng's words, that youth's face involuntarily turned a little red, both joyful and shy, but even more uneasy as he secretly glanced at Jun Luo beside him. This youth was the Lien family disciple Lien Cheng, whom Yan Zhaoge and Feng Yinsheng had met in the Sand region that year. Before this, he had already entered the Howling Windsword sect, his master precisely being Jun Ziyuan. Jun Luo had originally wanted to coax Feng Yinsheng a little, seeing how the usually valiant and heroic Feng Yinsheng looked embarrassed. Who knew that Feng Yinsheng would act naturally and gracefully, her expression not changing in the slightest as she instead began teasing her and Lien Cheng. Jun Luo's face turned slightly red, especially noticing Lien Cheng's gaze beside her. She hurriedly straightened her expression, coughing dryly. "Joy? Joy where? Don't tease me, senior apprentice sister Feng." As her words left her mouth, Lien Cheng instantly resembled a frosted eggplant. Seeing this, Yan Zhaoge and the others could not help but laugh. Lien Cheng's personality was weak, and he could be considered to have been completely grasped by Jun Luo. However, if he really wanted to get what he wanted, he would probably still have a very long way to go. Between the two of them, Jun Luo's initiative was too strong. However, while Jun Luo did not admit it, having been brought along by Jun Ziyuan, and now having come together with Jun Luo to the side of Yan Zhaoge, Feng Moyang, and Zhao Ming, to a certain extent, many things could be said about her. After all, this circle was very small. Feng, Yinsheng aside, Jing Yunji was already married to Zhao Ming. Yan Di hosted Jun Ziyuan's group. Yan Zhaoge hosted Jun Luo's group. Everyone chatted and laughed, both host and guest enjoying themselves. After Yan Di had returned to Broad Creed Mountain, the atmosphere there had become even better. Turbid Wave Pavilions, Pavilion Lord and Qinglin, Infinite Boundless Mountains Chief Chu Yan, and Jade Sea City's City Lord Song Wuliang all specially ascended the mountain to pay a visit. The situation of the entire Eight Extremities world had stabilized completely, with Yan Zhaoge's gains in the Dragon Tomb, as well as the oceanic amount of resources of the entire Eight Extremities world. Broad Creed Mountain rapidly recovered its vitality, expanding further. It was only a matter of time before they returned to their peak, or even ascended to a higher level. And it was precisely this matter of time that prevented Yan Zhaoge and those of Broad Creed Mountain from being blinded by the good situation. The powers of the Eight Extremities world were already unable to cause any waves, but the radiant light sect of the world beyond worlds would not let the matter rest, as they might come looking for trouble at any time. Yan Di directly entered secluded cultivation in the Myriad Dragon Palace, while Yan Zhaoge also unceasingly tempered himself. Time passed quickly, several months passing in the blink of an eye. One day, after Yan Zhaoge had finished his meditation, he analyzed that metallic fragment that old man Mo had gifted him. There were no remnants of the will or aura of the dim, radiant Emperor Yin Tianxia within, also no special feeling of power, causing Yan Zhaoge to be unable to get his head around it for a time. However, as Yan Zhaoge's cultivation base had risen in recent years, and his comprehension of the peerless heavenly scripture had deepened, his perception of the myriad arts of the heavens, and the earth had grown increasingly stronger. Analyzing this fragment, Yan Zhaoge vaguely felt that there really seemed to be some profundities within, just that he was temporarily unable to see through them. Yan Zhaoge's heart suddenly jolted slightly as he kept the metallic fragment. He felt the Myriad Dragon Palace seemingly shake for a moment, an extremely powerful aura emanating from the depths of the palace. The next moment, streams of purple qi overflowed, suffusing the Myriad Dragon Palace. The Myriad Dragon Palace was even unable to restrict this purple qi as it exited the palace. It directly enveloped the entire Broad Creed Mountain, even continuing to expand as it merged with the clear Qi Grand Formation, virtually turning the heavens and earth within 5,000 kilometers purple. A figure walked out neither swiftly nor slowly from the depths of the Myriad Dragon Palace. Yan Zhaoge instantly smiled. "Congratulations, Father, on emerging from seclusion and having improved further, stepping into the second level of the Martial Saint realm." Chapter 606. The person who had emerged from the depths of the Myriad Dragon Palace was naturally Yan Di. As he inhaled and exhaled, the all-encompassing purple qi that enveloped Broad Creed Mountain completely vanished. Gazing at Yan Di, Yan Zhaoge could only feel as the acupoints of his entire body pulsed, surging power as well as a sharp, tyrannical saber intent brimming within. With every step he took, the Eight Extremities world seemed to shake slightly. "It's all thanks to my gains from the battle of sealing the Flame Devils, as well as the abundant qi of true dragons in this Myriad Dragon Palace," Yan Di said. When he opened and closed his eyes, a faint purple light could be seen, and the shadows of dragons could be seen. There seemed to be countless dragons of light spiraling in the acupoints of his body. Yan Di walked up to Yan Zhaoge. "While I have succeeded in transcending mortality and entering sainthood, as well as my breakthrough into the second level of the Martial Saint realm this time, I have progressed rather quickly. I will have to stabilize my footsteps after this." Yan Zhaoge smiled. "I thought that your cultivation was like your saber technique, forging ahead with an indomitable will. The more fiercely you walk, the smoother it will instead be. If you stop to stabilize your footsteps, it might instead be harmful. Yen Di shook his head. Right now, I have still not reached that level. Therefore, I need to stop and sharpen my saber. Still, as you say, having reached a certain height, there is no longer a time for me to stop. Yen Zhaoge retracted his smile. I know that having left seclusion this time, you are preparing to forge your own sacred artifact. However, you will indeed need to temporarily slow down your pace for a while. Yen Di's gaze hardened. Oh, is something the matter? That's right. Our fellow sect members in the fire domain have sent back news that there has been a disturbance in the air at the ruins of the world illuminating peak. It's been a while, Yen Zhaoge said. If you had not emerged from seclusion these few days, I would have been prepared to rush over first. Fortunately, you were faster than me. Yen Di pondered. Those of the Sacred Sun clan previously guided those of the Radiant Light sect to descend at the world illuminating peak. Yen Zhaoge nodded. That's right. While the Sacred Sun clan has already been destroyed, and the world illuminating peak destroyed, those of the Radiant Light sect still have a way to find the Eight Extremities world once more. Influenced by the Sacred Sun clan earlier, their next location in the Eight Extremities world will most likely still be in the region of the world illuminating peak. Yen Zhaoge said, Let us go there and wait for them. Father and son immediately left Broad Creed Mountain, heading south and entering the fire domain. As Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di arrived, the Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners who were keeping watch in the vicinity immediately retreated. The world illuminating peak, which had always been illuminated day and night in the past, had already been directly leveled to the ground by Yen Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone, no longer existing. Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di landed on the ground together, father and son sitting in the meditative position. Looking up at the sky, he could see that the sky was clearly shaking and the boundaries of the space seemed blurry. Not to mention martial artists, even ordinary mortals could tell that something was amiss. The expressions of the two did not change as they sat quietly in the meditative position, their hearts like still water as not the slightest ripple could be felt within. The father and son sat there, streams of clear air swirling around their bodies, gathering and dispersing, rising and falling in an orderly manner. Just like that, Yen Zhaoge and Yen Zhaoge began meditating and cultivating on the remains of the world illuminating peak. As time passed, several more days passed. The commotion in the sky above grew even more obvious. 5 days later, at noon, when the sunlight in the sky was at its most blazing, Yen Di, who had been meditating with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. Yen Zhaoge felt something as well. Opening his eyes and gazing into the sky, he saw that the sunlight had suddenly turned unprecedentedly dazzling. The sky seemed to have opened at this moment, light sprinkling down from within, merging with the sunlight, as it was so piercing that one was virtually unable to open their eyes. A majestic aura emanated from that opened hole. In virtually just an instant, the space of the Eight Extremities world began to shake, winds surging and clouds surging. Accompanied by that intense radiance, a few figures appeared in the sky above the hole. Infinite radiance expanded in all directions, not just in the heavens, and earth around the world illuminating peak, as the entire fire domain seemed to be bathed in light at this moment. The bright light even seemed like it wanted to shoot out of the boundaries of the fire domain, illuminating the surrounding vast world. They're here. Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di stood up together. At this moment, the great earth around them was completely fine. Instead, further away, the earth was shockingly shattering unceasingly, numerous deep gorges appearing as they extended over the great earth, resembling numerous massive valleys. The other party had clearly noticed the two as a vast, majestic voice resounded from above the sky. Broad Creed Mountain, Yen Zhaoge? While it was a question, his tone was very certain. I am Yen Zhaoge. How should I address you? Yen Zhaoge was not surprised by this. While Deng Sun and the others of the Radiant Light sect had all perished, and the Sacred Sun clan had been destroyed, as well Meng Wan and Tang Yonghao, who recognized him, had been brought to the world beyond worlds. From there, the other party would be able to easily learn of his appearance. That majestic voice slowly said, "This old man is Zhang Chao." The Purple Sun Martial Saint, Zhang Chao. This name had once reverberated like thunder in the Eight Extremities world. The former chief of the Sacred Sun clan and the #1 expert in the history of the Sacred Sun clan, he had finally succeeded in taking that final step, attaining the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm and ascending to the world beyond worlds. Yen Zhaoge could feel a gaze seemingly sweeping past him. Beneath that gaze, his chi and blood, his essence and essence seemed about to boil and blaze together. The gaze swept past Yen Zhaoge before falling on Yendi, Broad Creed Mountain, Yendi? Yendi said mildly, "I have long heard of your name, Purple Sunday." Zhang Chao's voice resounded once more. "You being here also means that Guanglia has already met with a mishap." Yen Zhaoge said, "Huang Guanglia, Huang Su, and Huang Jia, 3 generations of their lineage have already been slain by me." The voice in the sky paused slightly before resounding once more. "Since that is so, go down and accompany them." Immeasurable radiance flickered even more brightly as one of the figures moved. Then Yen Zhaoge felt as if a sun had appeared in the sky, shooting straight down towards him down below. The entire heavens and the earth seemed to be blazing as they were about to be purified by the sunlight that contained infinite light and heat. Yet Yen Zhaoge's expression was expressionless as he stood quietly where he was, not moving in the slightest. As the great sun descended, a violent saber light that was tyrannical beyond compare shot into the skies, directly extinguishing that descending great sun. Yen Zhaoge soundless laughed. His father had stepped into the 2nd level of the Martial Saint realm, but he was completely different from other 2nd-level Martial Saints. His Northern Ocean clone was already exceptionally powerful amongst martial practitioners of the same cultivation level, rarely meeting a match for him. However, the Northern Ocean clone of the 2nd level of the Martial Saint realm, possessing 2 sacred artifacts, the Imperious Cold Martial Armor and the Fish Dragon Spear, would only be able to fight to a draw against Yen Di of the 1st level of the Martial Saint realm. Now that Yen Di had stepped into the 2nd level of the Martial Saint realm, even if Deng Sun and the others were resurrected and joined forces, they would probably not be a match for him. The current Yen Di was truly invincible in the Eight Extremities world. Even if those from the world beyond worlds descended, their cultivation bases suppressed to below the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm would still be hard-pressed to withstand Yendi's terrifying saber aura. If they wanted to deal with Yendi, they would only be able to surround and attack him together with numerous experts of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm. Yen Zhaoge had sufficient reason to suspect that the power that the extreme Yang Seal could currently wield might not even be able to slay Yendi with a single strike from it. Zhang Chao had thought that he had returned gloriously to take revenge this time. In the end, he would only be able to smash his head against a metal plate and bleed profusely. To be continued. Chapter 607. Fairly speaking, as an expert of the Eight Extremities world who had transcended the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm and ascended to the world beyond worlds, Zhang Chao was naturally extraordinary. Whether it was in terms of talent or personal strength, he was one of the peak figures in the entire history of the Eight Extremities world. Yet, the person he was facing now was an existence that could not be gauged using common sense. As the current Zhang Chao descended into the Eight Extremities world, his cultivation base would be suppressed to the peak of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm by the power of dimensions. Yet his opponent was someone whom he would not be able to easily defeat even in his perfect state of the 4th level of the Martial Saint realm. Yen Di's expression was calm, his hands empty. High-grade spirit artifacts were already unusable by the current him, as they were completely unable to bear that domineering, sharp saber intent of his at all. The saber light extinguished the descending sun in the sky, a muffled groan resounding from within. A figure no longer descended, instead rising upwards once more. Yendi's figure rose alongside it. Meanwhile, amidst the infinite radiance in the sky, the remaining figures descended as well. In an instant, the entire dimension of the eight extremities world seemed to be shaking together. At the same time, too many peak experts descended into this world, the impact instantly seemingly about to cause the eight extremities world to explode. Apart from Zhang Chao, there were 5 other figures. That majestic power shocked the heavens and shook the earth, shockingly all of them possessing the strength of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm. Like Zhang Chao, the heavens and the earth shook as they raised their hands and feet, their cultivation bases clearly being suppressed by the power of dimensions. Terrifying power congregated together. Just breathing alone seemed to disrupt the normal spiritual chi flow of the entire 8 extremities world. The 2 of them raised their hands together, the sun and moon alternating within one of their palms, light illuminating the heavens and the earth. It was precisely the sun-moon interchanging art of the radiant light sex direct lineage and the sun-moon divine palm. As the palm rose, the sun and the moon were grasped within, yin and yang interchanging, bright light infinite. Meanwhile, heavy black chi surged within the palm of the other person, evil and strange, as it distorted and terrifying. A black fog that resembled thick ink surged amidst the incomparably bright light, the radiance actually unable to illuminate this dense fog. Within the dense fog, there seemed to be countless devils rising and descending, roaring together as they caused one's mind to shake, hard to resist. Yendi faced his opponents head-on, completely fearless as he brandished his saber, myriad phenomena appearing as he cleaved the heavens and split the earth. I don't care if it's the sun and moon in the sky or the demons dancing wildly. I'll break it all with one slash. Wherever the saber light passed, the sun sank, the bright moon was extinguished, the devilish aura was swept away, and the group of demons was beheaded. Those 2 stumbled backwards together, Zhang Chao and the other 2 charging forward once more. While Zhang Chao did not possess a sacred artifact, the radiance and great power of sacred artifacts surged from the bodies of the other 2 radiant light sect experts of the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm, light surging into the heavens as the entire universe shook. Yendi's expression did not change as the clear chi robe appeared on his body, bolstered by its power. Yendi's aura similarly surged, beating his opponent into continuous retreat. Of the 6 opponents, the final one did not join forces with the others to attack Yendi, instead turning and shooting towards Yen Zhaoga. He turned into a stream of light and instantly shot through the sky, as if ignoring the existence of time and the distance of space. This was the radiant light sex orthodox direct lineage technique, the 1,000 illusory flowing light art that was on par with the sun-moon interchanging art and the radiant light illuminating art. Yen Zhaoga felt as though his vision was virtually unable to capture the other party's figure. Even the Northern Ocean clone at the 3rd level of the Martial Saint realm would not be able to match such a speed. However, Yendi did not panic in the slightest as he directly struck out with another saber. His domineering, sharp saber intent seemed to undergo some other changes at this moment. All existences in the surrounding space seemed to slow down as they seemed about to fall still. Meanwhile, his saber light appeared even swifter. The figure of that radiant light sect expert who had intended to attack Yen Zhaoga inconceivably slowed as Yendi's saber light arrived before him in the blink of an eye. The 2 clashed in midair, that radiant light sect expert groaning tragically as fresh blood directly splattered onto the great earth. After repelling this opponent with a single saber, Yendi did not cease in his movements. His saber like shocking waves that were fierce and violent yet unceasing as he sent out a few more sabers, forcing another opponent into retreat. Zhang Chao aside. The other Radiant Light sect experts each wielded a low-grade sacred artifact, their strength breaking through space as they had already destroyed the surrounding heavens and earth of the world illuminating peak to the point of being unrecognizable. The 8 extremities world seemed like it was about to be ripped apart from the inside. However, Yendi remained undaunted as he fought 1 against 6, actually not falling to a disadvantage in the least, as the Radiant Light sect experts were unable to advance any further. Looking calmly at them within the sky, Yen Zhaoga slowly raised his right hand before clenching it into a fist. Accompanied by this clenching motion of Yen Zhaoga's, brilliant sunlight shot into the skies as a great golden seal manifested amidst the sunlight, its majestic, tyrannical power seemingly intolerable to this region of the heavens and earth. The majestic power caused everyone present to stare at it. High-grade sacred artifact, the extreme Yang seal. Seeing the extreme Yang seal, the faces of Zhang Chao and the others were sunken as water as they sighed soundlessly. While they had known of the power and ferocity of the extreme Yang seal, having dared to descend into the 8 extremities world, the Radiant Light sect experts must have had some confidence in their ability to do so. It was just that they had not thought that a problem would actually arise. Yendi's strength that surpassed their imaginations had caught them completely off guard. While they knew that Yendi was extraordinary, it had still been less than 2 years since he had transcended mortality and entered sainthood. Within such a short period of time, Yendi had actually been able to advance further, stepping into the 2nd level of the martial saint realm. This had surpassed everyone's predictions. Meanwhile, Yendi, who had stepped into the 2nd level of the martial saint realm, was truly powerful to the extreme, as even those of the Radiant Light sect, who hailed from the world beyond worlds, felt shocked. The purple sun, martial saint Zhang Chao's heart tightened. Even the exalted heaven shaker Zhandonga, who had caused him to flee at the mere sight of him back, then had not been as terrifying as Yendi at the same cultivation level. While he, Zhang Chao, had successfully ascended, it was the current Yendi who was the number 1 person in the history of the 8 extremities world. Under such circumstances, encountering the sacred artifact, the extreme Yang seal, Zhang Chao, and the others no longer had any ideas at all. Retreat was their only choice. Otherwise, they would only follow in the footsteps of Deng Sen's group, completely perishing within the 8 extremities world. Zhang Chao and the other 2 whose cultivation bases were higher than the 3rd level of the martial saint realm simultaneously skyrocketed in power. Yet, they were suppressed by the power of dimensions as they gradually vanished from the heavens and earth of the 8 extremities world. Meanwhile, the other 3 shot towards the radiance within the sky that had yet to completely dissipate. That was the remnant wound of the sky. They had made ample preparations, this time as they had prepared a path of retreat. Seeing this, Yen Zhaoga and Yendi would naturally not let their opponents leave so easily. Being able to kill as many Radiant Light sect experts as possible was exactly what they wanted. Yendi's saber light arose once more, hacking through the sky. Not just the 3 who were fleeing towards the wound of the sky. Even Zhang Chao and the others who had yet to completely ascend were swept within as well. The terrifying extreme Yang seal mightily struck towards the other side. Now, however, a streak of black chi suddenly surged from the wound of the sky. Where the black chi passed, sunlight instantly dimmed as the heavens and earth were plunged into darkness. To be continued.